Believe it or not, modern Australia is almost tame compared to what it once was. Today, stepping outside might bring a kangaroo boinging past or a curious kookaburra overhead. But 50,000 years ago, this place was a waking nightmare. Imagine dark, red dirt night, and in the hush, you see two glowing eyes 6 feet above the ground, unmistakably alive. Could it be a crashed spaceship pilot? No, it would have been a 7-meter-long goanna or a land crocodile called Quinkana. Picture a crocodile that looks you square in the eyes while standing up on its legs, ready to chase you through the scrub. That would have been your neighbor, even scaring yourself by thinking of tarantulas. Vanishes next to that. It sounds like a bad joke in a horror comedy. You almost expect to punch out the monster and say, "Just kidding." Imagine being an early human, hearing hooves pounding at midnight, then turning to see a croc. Yes, a real croc, galloping toward you like a dinosaur. You think of snakes or spiders in Australia, but those nightmares fade in comparison to a predator the size of a car sprinting toward you. It all sounds impossible, a rumor or a campfire story, but the fossils and bones confirm it. What kind of creatures roamed free in this forsaken land, ready to make life exciting for any unsuspecting wanderer? Let's focus on one of the nightmares, the Quinkana, the real land crocodile. Imagine a crocodile that shuns water and runs on land like a lizard on steroids. It had legs so long it kept its belly off the ground, and toes that ended in blunt, hoof-like claws. One Quinkana was about 3 meters long and 200 kilograms, roughly the size of a great white shark out of water, and bigger ones apparently stretched to 6 meters, the length of a bus. That means a single human might have looked like a snack to it, a harmless snack. Its brain was no bigger than a dinner plate, but its jaws were full of blade-like, saw-toothed teeth made for slicing. We call those teeth zippodont, like a built-in serrated knife set. Picture trying to defend yourself with a foil sword against a steamroller. That croc had the advantage. If that sounds terrifying, it gets worse. Quinkana could swim when it needed to. Jumping into a billabong would not have helped unless you could swim faster than this land croc. Even water was its territory, literally. Facing down Quinkana on land or in the river would have felt like being cornered by an unstoppable force. It's like telling your friend you outran a crocodile and having them laugh until you pull up a fresh chunk of tree trunk. It's all too real. So ask yourself, if a creature like this was out hunting with hungry eyes, could anything stop it? No less monstrous was Megalania, the giant monitor lizard. Picture a Komodo dragon at the gym, bulking up into a monster. That's Megalania. Paleontologists estimate it was at least 3.5 meters long, about the length of a large car, weighing more than 158 kilograms, as heavy as a big bear. But those are just conservative estimates. Some bones suggest it could have grown as long as nearly 8 meters, as long as the longest anaconda ever found, and weigh up to 2 tons, like an SUV on steroids. Imagine a lizard the size and weight of a family car. Now imagine it hungry. It had long, curved, razor-sharp teeth, built to grip and pull, not just puncture, but saw into its victims. Megalania may have even been venomous, like today's monitor lizards. If a Komodo dragon's bite feels bad, think of this. Its bite could have let blood pour and wounds fester with powerful anticoagulant venom. Its legs would have been like pillars, able to pin down prey, and its tail could whip like a scythe. This behemoth could take down anything in its path. A newborn Megalania might stare into the world at eye level with a grown man, but a full-size one was almost unimaginable. In simple terms, it was nature's nightmare lizard, primeval and relentless. What chance would any creature have against an 8-meter, 2-ton lizard that could swim faster or run ahead of its prey on land? And if lizards weren't enough to make you lose sleep, Australia had a giant snake too. Meet Wanambi, a colossal serpent unlike any today. Think a Burmese python on extreme steroids. Wanambi is one of the largest snakes ever. It reached lengths of 6 meters tail to nose, comparable to a very large python or anaconda. Here is the twist. This serpent didn't have venom. Instead, it killed like a constrictor, ambushing prey near waterholes and crushing them to death. But unlike friendly constrictors, Wanambi's neck and jaw were too stiff to swallow something big in one go. So, when prey didn't fit, it simply did what may make you shudder. It used its sharp teeth and muscles to tear chunks off its victims. Imagine being squeezed in a python's coils, only to have huge chunks carved out of you. That's Wanambi's signature move. As you can guess, such a fate is no pleasant way to go out. Its bite might first knock you out, and then pieces of you vanish into the grass. It's gruesome, but that's reality for unlucky critters. One can only wonder, what could have possibly been scarier? Yet even this giant snake wasn't top of the food chain. Some of those killer lizards we met would have been its worst nightmare too. Still, facing down a 7-meter serpent that chops up dinner would make anyone question, how did early humans even survive in a world like this? Now consider Thylacoleo, the so-called marsupial lion, Australia's answer to the saber-toothed tiger. But it wasn't a cat at all. It was a pocket-sized terror built by marsupial evolution. Imagine a creature roughly the size of a large cougar, with the frame of a heavy bear, and built with the strongest muscles for its size. Its skull was weird, small brain but huge spaces for jaw muscles. Its front teeth were long and dagger-like, much larger than a real lion's. Behind them, its back teeth were flattened like knives. Essentially, this was a predator packing a mouthful of steak knives. One bite from this creature could be like slamming into a car. It was estimated that a medium Thylacoleo could bite with the force of a lion 2.5 times its size. It could kill prey more than 10 times heavier than itself in under a minute. At that speed, a human would be lucky to last a second. Thylacoleo also had unique claws. It walked on all fours, but each front paw had a single, large, retractable claw, like having a pocket knife for a thumb. Some scientists even think it climbed trees, storing kills in branches, like a feline felling its meal. To sum it up, this marsupial was a tiny tank, muscle, bone, and blade teeth combined. Imagine a large cat with bear claws, bred from a wombat and a saber-tooth. Something out of a nightmare. In the wild Australian woods, encountering a Thylacoleo would have been as dangerous as stepping into a lion's den, only it wouldn't hear a growl before it attacked. So, which creature would be worse to meet face to face? But it wasn't all predators. The herbivores fought back with their own armor. Meet Diprotodon, a giant version of a wombat. If a regular wombat weighs a few dozen kilograms, this beast was more than 1,000 times heavier. Imagine a wombat as large as an entire elephant. It stood up to 4 meters long and weighed nearly 4 tons, like carrying a compact car on its back. This massive vegetarian looks like a tank designed for foliage, not prey. But don't mistake it for a pushover. It had a massive, beaver-like front end with strong muscles and teeth built for chewing tough plants. Its bite force was incredible. Scientists estimate Diprotodon could bite down with more than 11,000 newtons of force at its molars, more than enough to crack a human leg bone like a brittle twig. Predators had to be smart. Hunting it would have been like trying to take down a charging rhinoceros wearing a burlap suit. Any predator that tried probably ended up as just a scratched-up curiosity. Diprotodon was as peaceful as a cow, but crossing paths with one could feel like stumbling into a moving fortress. Even its babies were born hefty. A baby Diprotodon might have weighed as much as a pony. In a land where predators and prey both grew so large and tough, how did smaller animals find safety? Even the skies had their giants. Dromornis, a massive flightless bird. Picture an ostrich on a growth hormone binge. This bird was taller than a 6-foot man and weighed a quarter ton, about the mass of a small car. Its legs were thick like tree trunks, its body as heavy as a grand piano. It had a big beak and sharp claws, yet it was an herbivore. Think of a turkey crossed with an alligator. It looked like a predator, but munches on plants. Seeing one of these in your path would have been surreal. A human could kneel inside its eggshell. It could easily kick or peck if threatened, and its strong legs could trample almost anything. Its feathers were essentially decorative fluff on a great armored tank. The tiniest chick was probably the size of a medium dog. Inhabitants of the ancient outback had to watch out for even these plant eaters. After all, if you saw a creature that big charging at you, would you risk a fight or try to climb a tree? With predators lurking everywhere and wide open plains, the line between hunter and hunted was always blurred. When even the prey animals looked like steel traps with feathers, how would any vulnerable creature find safety? Even the tiniest creatures were giants in prehistoric Australia. Imagine a dragonfly the size of a hawk, its wings cutting the air as it swooped over ancient marshes. Envision spiders that would fill your whole palm, their bodies the size of dinner plates, bristling with venomous hairs. These were real finds in the fossil record, not movie monsters. Back then, insects ruled in their own way. Giant centipedes, as long as your forearm, scurried through the undergrowth. The grass itself could be dangerous, edged with spines that could slice bare skin. Ants built massive colonies the size of boulders. Imagine stepping over an anthill and sending millions of soldiers swarming out. Even cockroaches and beetles were bigger. Some roamed like armored tanks with mandibles the size of your finger. Meanwhile, the plants formed an alien jungle around these beasts. Ancient ferns and cycads towered overhead. Their thick fronds shaded the earth. Strange conifers like Wollemi pines grew here, their spindly limbs filtering the sun. The ground might have been carpeted by rough, spiky shrubs and tough grasses. Every step you took could crush a pocket of life, alive and crawling. A sprawling community hidden in the underbrush. Armed with this knowledge, paleontologists painstakingly piece together the past. Amber and sediment have revealed these monsters to us, one fossilized leg or wing at a time. So ask yourself, would you dare walk barefoot in that ancient jungle, knowing almost everything around you could sting, bite, or crush you? Our story, though, begins even earlier, in stone and plate. Nearly 50 million years ago, Australia tore free from Antarctica, finally breaking away from the last vestiges of the supercontinent Gondwana. Imagine a great puzzle crackling apart, and one piece drifting north into tropical waters. Australia became its own island world, surrounded by ocean deserts no creature could easily cross. No elephants, no big cats, no woolly mammoths ever set foot here after that. Instead, it was left with an ancient starting kit: marsupials, monotremes, and a few intrepid birds that flew into this new land. In effect, evolution ran a standalone laboratory experiment. The continent drifted toward the equator, and its climate changed. Monsoons swept across it for part of the year, then a brutal drought scorched it for the rest. Rivers ran dry and reformed every few thousand years. Mountains, like the Great Dividing Range, slowly uplifted as the island warped. Meanwhile, new species on other continents had no way in. It was as if an entire land ran a marathon that nobody else was part of. On other continents, lions and hyenas and giant kangaroos of a different kind emerged. Here, strange relatives filled every niche. The world needed lions, hippos, and horses. Australia made its own versions. Deer and gazelles? Here hopped kangaroos, large and small. Forest browsers? Koalas did the job in reverse, eating eucalyptus instead of leaves. All on its own, this lonely continent rewrote the rulebook of life. Why did this experiment result in such strange giants? Could any other path have emerged on this isolated island? Of course, being isolated wasn't the only challenge. Australia sailed into a dry, sun-baked climate. The land itself was ancient, with soils leached of almost everything life needs. Volcanoes and glaciers that shake up nutrients on other continents were absent here. So the earth was tired and hungry. It was as if someone tried to grow a garden in pure sand. Rainfall was scarce and erratic. Some years brought months of monsoonal downpours, filling rivers and lakes. But then came year after year of drought. Imagine a cycle of floods and famine pressed on life without mercy. Plants became masters of conservation. They didn't let go of any water or nutrient. Trees grew thick armor, bark a foot thick, to protect from drought and fire. Leaves were hardened or waxy to prevent evaporation. The soil held its wealth like a miser. To survive, grasses and shrubs had deep roots, and some plants even got nutrients by snapping up insects or growing alongside fungi. It was like living on a strict budget forever. Hunters and animals alike had to be water-wise or perish. Many were nocturnal to avoid daytime heat. Even the animals grew lean and hardy. Kangaroos conserve water. Wombats live underground. Echidnas slow their heartbeats. Where water was present, life exploded briefly. Birds nested in riverside trees, and fruits fell for opportunistic feeders. For most of the year, however, the interior was bone dry, forcing creatures to travel hundreds of miles or wait in torpor. This deep scarcity begs the question: in a place this stingy, which life forms would truly make it? In this hard, dry land, water is everything. Picture an empty plain under a scorching sun. After weeks without rain, every hoof, paw, and wingtip creeps toward the same muddy waterhole. This was the theater of life and death. Small wallabies might drink side by side with enormous marsupial rhinos, united by thirst. But predators, crocodiles by the bank and giant lizards in the shadows, waited unseen. The watering hole became like a bank during a rush. Creatures pressed close, hearts pounding, eyes darting. No one could afford a false move. One wrong step could bring a predator's pounce. For prey, lifting your nose from the water was a risk. If you tried to lunge for a quick sip, you might find a crocodile's teeth inches away. If you jumped back in fear, that still could wash you out to cold depths. For predators, the feast was obvious, but fraught with competition. Crocodiles fought over the biggest catches. Giant lizards chased the wounded. Snakes lurked, and birds of prey circled, waiting for scraps. It was like a battlefield where both sides had the same objective: drink and survive. Who had the advantage when every thirsty mouth came to one spot? Can you imagine living on such a timeline? And then there was fire, the great purifier. In Australia's dry climate, fires were regular guests, not rare accidents. The forests themselves smelled of tinder. Eucalyptus leaves release an oily fragrance that, on a still hot day, hangs in the air like an invisible alarm. One lightning strike, and the woods could ignite in a heartbeat. Vast firestorms would sweep the land. Walls of flame, hundreds of feet high, roared forward, igniting the canopy and the underbrush all at once. The sky above a firestorm would glow like dawn beyond a wall of flame. Even the ground shook from the heat. Animal hooves, talons, and claws retreated to earth. Wombats and burrowing marsupials hid underground, while reptiles and insects sought damp soil. Birds scattered, but flames raced faster. Many plants didn't fight fire. They needed it. Thick-barked trees survived, only to sprout leaves that would store more oils for the next blaze. Seeds lay dormant in the ashes, waiting for the heat to crack them open. It was a place reborn from fire, over and over. Yet it never became gentle. In such a fire-forged world, how did living things evolve to cope and even thrive? All these forces, isolation, drought, and fire, created a world unlike any other. It was a place written in slow, harsh strokes, where creatures grew strange and large in response to the challenge. Imagine that ancient forest. Hard-leafed trees and vast red plains baked under the same sky where those monsters roamed. Each adaptation was a note in a tough melody written by the land itself. In many ways, Australia was a continent playing by its own rulebook, like a solitary island developing a wildly different culture. The rest of the world continued its arms race in mountains and jungles, while Sahul's life danced to a separate drum. It's a bit like listening to two different songs at once: bird songs in Europe and grunts in Australia. Each told a survival story, but on different frequencies. All its own, this lonely place produced a very different kind of giant. This fact lingers through time. Why did it happen here and not somewhere else? What lessons did evolution write in the red dust? And if the past was this brutal, what could it mean for our future? Are we truly listening to the whispers of that forgotten world? A strangely quiet ending awaits this horror show. Within a few thousand years after humans arrived, almost all these giants vanished, on land and in water. The giant lizards, the marsupial lion, the massive wombat, even the horned turtles and river crocodiles. Almost all had gone. It's as if someone switched off the lights on a grand, terrifying stage. What could snuff out such a fearsome cast of predators and prey? The clues lie in more than one direction. Australia's climate was changing. The ice ages were advancing in the Southern Ocean, shifting weather patterns. The great inland lakes dried and the plains cracked. At the same time, a new predator was mastering the land. Humans, armed with fire and stone tools. Overhunting was likely part of it. Perhaps humans and habitat together created the final blow. Imagine a 1-2 punch. Climate swings followed by relentless hunting. Even the toughest creature can fall to that double threat. The silence that replaced the roars and splashes must have felt eerie, like the final page of a story you desperately wanted to continue. When the dust finally settled, Australia's wild drama had ended. It leaves us with a haunting question. After so much life, who or what is truly responsible for this great extinction? Even after all this blood and bone, echoes of those giants survived in Aboriginal cultures. Folklore is rich with tales of monstrous serpents and friendly giant spirits, perhaps born from real encounters. Maybe every megalania became a dragon in a story. Every diprotodon, a gentle ancestor carrying the tribe on its back in Dreamtime paintings. Rock art and legends might not be history textbooks, but they remind us that people once lived side by side with these creatures. The Earth's bones are out there. Each fossilized footprint or fragment is an old memory. For example, the mysterious bunyip of the swamps could be inspired by giant crocs or amphibious monsters. Even the Tasmanian tiger was hunted to extinction only in the last century, but its ghost may linger in cave paintings and tales of a devil cat. So for us today, piecing together this ancient world is like reading someone else's dream. Do our myths and legends preserve a grain of truth about those giants? Can we still hear their footsteps in the red dust of the outback? Today, scientists act like detectives of the deep past, chasing clues hidden in bone and stone. Imagine kneeling in the red dust, brushing the glittering sand off an enormous thigh bone. The air is thick with the smell of earth and chalk. Every ridge and groove in that fossil tells a story. When paleontologists discover a 2-meter vertebra, their hearts skip. This was once part of a living monster. In labs, they carefully peel rock from fossils and study them like ancient artifacts. Perhaps some are lucky enough to hold a quiver tip, one of the first stone points made to hunt these creatures. Each new find is a revelation. The partial skeleton of a diprotodon, the tooth of a thylacoleo hidden in clay, even giant dragonfly wings preserved perfectly in shale. Working at dig sites is tough. The heat bears down, and for each bone uncovered, the team painstakingly records its position. Even a small tooth can rewrite our understanding. Think of a volunteer carefully freeing a giant molar from rock with a tiny paintbrush, while wondering which creature it came from. University labs hold these treasures. The fossilized vertebra of a diprotodon. Is that the spine of a wombat elephant? The saber-like incisors of thylacoleo. How many times did it tear into prey? This is detective work on a geologic scale. Each discovery asks more questions. Was this muscle attachment built for running or pouncing? What did this predator's roar or hiss sound like? We may never know all the answers, but we keep digging. What other secrets is the Australian Earth holding? If you were an explorer, would you dare unearth another chapter of this land's incredible story? Looking at it all now, ancient Australia feels like a warning sign about change. As our planet warms and climates shift, could we be repeating history on a global scale? Today, humans are warming the planet and cutting habitats. Are we, in effect, playing a role similar to that 1-2 punch that ended the megafauna? Consider that some of Earth's greatest wildfires and droughts now happen here. We are watching the air turn orange across continents and forests snap into flames on hot afternoons, as if we've turned a dial back toward prehistoric Australia. Can the survivors here teach us something? Species have thrived in arid corners before by evolving cunning tricks, but there is no time for evolution to catch up now. We see change happening in just decades. So, as we look at the red dust and whispering gums, we must ask, if ancient Australia is a guide, what future are we writing now? Are we the giants or the first insects in the story yet to come? And what role will we play? The nightmarish land down under wasn't always tamer than we imagine. Even now, Australia's outback feels alive with menace, snake warning signs, the twitch of giant spiders in the garden, the smell of eucalyptus that can sting the lungs. It's a place where every rustle might have fangs. Picture walking barefoot along a red dirt path at dusk. The sky is blood orange, the earth still warm, the air thick with eucalyptus oil. You shake a twig from your sandal, step back, and notice a pair of eyes watching you in the beam of your torch. A soft hiss cracks the silence. This place isn't just big, it's built on danger. 20 of the world's 25 deadliest snakes live here, including every single one of the top 11. Cassowaries, those stocky jungle birds, occasionally charge and fatally gore people, one of the few bird species known to do so. Even the insects seem on steroids. Enormous spiders, scorpions, and centipedes scuttle in the leaf litter. There are creepy stories of pine cones dropping like darts, though that might be folklore. Hell, even the dry season feels alive. The dry winds carry the oily scent of millions of eucalyptus leaves, as if the forest itself is breathing and dreaming of fire. In fact, 3 of the largest wildfires of the 21st century have raged across this sunburned land. Australians joke that everything here wants to kill you. And after walking these red roads, you'd almost believe it. But how did such a mortal paradise arise on a lonely continent? If you think Australia is wild today, buckle up. Try to imagine what it was like 50,000 years ago. The climate is warm, the bush alive with unfamiliar sounds, but lurking in every shadow are beasts you'd barely believe. Dinosaurs were long gone, yet gargantuan reptiles still prowled the night. Picture a 2-legged crocodile, nearly 3 meters long, claws clicking on the earth as it lumbers toward you with jaws snapping. That was Quinkana, the land crocodile. No swamp or river needed to hide it, because Quinkana could sprint as fast as a man, snapping up anything in its path. Now picture a monitor lizard, the length of a school bus, teeth and claws to match. That was Megalania, whose very name means great roamer. It could easily stretch to 8 meters long and weigh over a ton, dwarfing today's Komodo dragons. Some evidence even hints it had venom, like its cousin, the Komodo. By the river, a colossal snake would coil in wait. Wanambi could grow 6 meters long, bigger than the largest pythons alive today. Yet its head was oddly narrow. It ambushed prey with lightning strikes and constricted them like a deadly boa. In its slender jaw, it couldn't swallow big animals whole, so it would bite and then tear hunks off its victim, sometimes even disemboweling it. For early humans, stepping off their rafts, arriving in this island was like crashing a horror movie sequel. Every rustle in the grass, every ripple in a stream, could mean massive jaws or talons were closing in. What chance did a newcomer have on this monster isle? Imagine the bone-chilling dread of being next to Quinkana when it strikes. A 2-legged croc, 3 meters long, weighing 200 kilograms or more. It was about the size of an American alligator on steroids. Its long legs and hoof-like toes kept its body high off the ground. built for a deadly chase. Its skull was narrow and reinforced. Scientists even put it in its own extinct family, the Micosukine, because of its odd shape. But the real horror was its teeth. Quinkana's teeth were long, blade-like, and heavily serrated. Imagine a steak knife forged from living bone. Each bite could tear through muscle and tendon like butter. A single snap of its powerful jaws, and a dinner-sized marsupial would be crumpled into a bloody rag. If you thought you could escape by ducking into water, think again. Quinkana could swim surprisingly well too. Even a quiet creek or bog would not save you from its reach. For millennia it reigned over the bush, a top predator no spear could easily stop. So how did this land crocodile finally vanish from the fossil record? And as if that weren't enough, along came Megalania, a monitor lizard beyond anything alive today. Imagine a Komodo dragon pumped full of steroids. Even the most conservative estimates put Megalania at 3.5 meters long, taller than most people. That's the size of a big car from nose to tail, and weighing at least 150 kilograms, about as much as a large adult. And that might be the underestimate. Some fossils suggest it could stretch 8 meters long as a city bus, and weigh up to 2 tons. By comparison, it was like encountering a roaming tank. Its teeth were long and recurved, like curved steak knives, and its front claws were razor sharp. It used them to grip and slam prey. And true to Aussie flair, Megalania probably had venom too. All modern monitors do. A bite that would slow your blood to a crawl. In a confrontation, you'd bite or flee first, because a bite and wait strategy was deadly. Bite, let venom thin the blood, and the victim would collapse hours later, unable to clot. With a single bite from Megalania, even if you limped away, you'd bleed out like a sieve as poison worked behind the scenes. Facing a beast like that was literally a game of survival. What hope did any creature have against a hunter this enormous? If giant, cold-blooded monsters ruled the day, mammals were hardly safe either. Meet Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion. Imagine the strangest crossbreed of a lion and a koala. And that koala spent every waking hour lifting weights. Thylacoleo had a stocky, muscular build, unlike any big cat. Its skull was massive, compact, and reinforced to anchor the densest bite muscles known. An average adult was the size of a European wild boar, but much heavier. The largest rivaled a full-grown lioness or tiger in bulk. Paleontologists have calculated it had the most powerful bite of any mammal, pound for pound. It likely bit with as much force as a lion 5 times its size. In other words, this koala's cousin could snap the neck of a beast many times its weight. It pulled this off with bizarre teeth. In front, it had oversized incisors acting like big stabbing canines, and behind those enormous flat molars shaped like steak cleavers. In a kill, it would plunge the front teeth deep into flesh, then hammer the back teeth together to slice into windpipes, neck arteries, or spinal columns. A modern African lion might take over 10 minutes to kill a big prey. Thylacoleo could do it in under a minute. And if jaws weren't enough, it carried a pair of hooked thumb claws on each hand, one for each semi-opposable thumb, that could rip into prey or give it the power to climb trees with its kill. This marsupial was the ultimate ambush predator. What could possibly challenge such a hunter? Even plant eaters earned their keep. Consider Drought, the giant wombat. If you think wombats are stout, picture one on steroids. Drought grew up to 4 tons, the weight of a small elephant or hippo. yet it munched only foliage. Standing shoulder-high to a human, it had a squat, heavy skull and massive teeth. By some estimates, its jaws could generate 11,000 newtons of force, enough to snap a human femur as easily as you'd break a twig. Imagine a wombat whose single chomp is like squeezing an elephant's leg. With muscles like that, any predator would think twice. It was the size of a big rig on legs, armored by mass and power. Early hunters faced a nightmare challenge. Even a wounded diprotodon could steamroll you. Some evidence suggests humans did hunt it, but even then, it would have been a fight to the death. The fact that such a plant eater could potentially bite through bone means ancient Aussies were always on edge. Even the harmless giants carried a hidden punch. What chance did early man have against prey built like this? Not to be outdone, ancient Australia grew giant birds as well. Meet Dromornis, a flightless bird the size of an NBA player. It looked like a terror bird with a massive head, but it was actually a bulky herbivore. Adults stood around 2 meters tall, well over 6 feet, and weighed about a quarter ton, making them heavier than most humans by many times. With legs thicker than tree trunks and a huge arched beak, Dromornis was built like a tank on 2 legs. Its bones were stout and reinforced. It could deliver a powerful kick or peck like a sledgehammer blow. A charging Dromornis could easily disembowel any predator that got too close. Imagine an emu on steroids. That's how imposing it was. Even if it only ate plants, it had sharp claws and muscles that let it defend fiercely. With monsters on 4 legs and on 2, ancient Australia truly felt like a brutal gladiatorial arena. And yet, somehow, humans not only survived, but thrived. It seems we became the real masters of this land. But how? How did our small band stand unscathed among such giants? To understand that, we have to zoom out even further, to the continent itself. Imagine dimming the campfire and looking at the Earth from space. Then zoom in on an island adrift in the Southern Ocean. Nearly 50 million years ago, a massive breakup was happening. Australia tore the final threads of connection to Antarctica and Gondwana. This green land began a lonely drift north into warmer seas. At the same time, the rest of the world was experiencing a completely different chapter. Placental mammals, the kind that give live birth and nurse fully developed young, were spreading everywhere. Horses in North America, big cats in Africa, dog and bear ancestors in Eurasia and beyond. They raced across land bridges, locked in endless competition, each new rivalry forcing them to run faster, hunt smarter, and become fiercer. By contrast, Australia's doors slammed shut. It became a vast, isolated laboratory in the ocean. No new mammal species could break in to shake things up. Only the animals already there could evolve. This was evolution on its own clock. Left alone, Australia's life took a strange detour. Placental mammals never arrived. Instead, marsupials and monotremes filled every niche. In our world, where a lion or tiger was needed, Australia invented Thylacoleo, the pouch lion. Where a hippo or rhino would roam rivers, it built Diprotodon, the wombat elephant. It created kangaroos that walked on all fours, and giant flightless geese that could knock you out with a snap of their beaks. It is perhaps the greatest testament to convergent evolution. From scratch, this island repeatedly built its own versions of familiar monsters, all from the same pouchy genetic clay. The rest of the world had horses, lions, and wolves. Australia had pouched versions of each. It rebuilt ecosystems in a dreamlike image, but one that had never seen the original. In this lonely lab, a single basic marsupial plan exploded to fill every ecological role. This isolation had a price. In the absence of external competition, evolution could slow down and grow complacent. Good enough creatures survived without pushing for perfection. For millions of years, Australia's giants played out their dramas like a slow-motion movie, unaware of the pressures outside. It was not a world of weakness, far from it. These animals were extreme. But it was a world of naivety. They had never faced a rival that moved as fast or thought as clever as those in Eurasia or America. It was a land that time nearly forgot. The life on it was composed to a different score, one written in its own idiosyncratic key. And yet, this land wasn't a blank canvas. Its very nature was imposing its own harshness. Isolation set the stage, but the character of the drama was dictated by the continent itself. Australia would become a crucible of fire and thirst. It was never a gentle Eden of lush rivers. No, in many ways, it was a furnace. As Australia drifted north, it entered latitudes of ancient dryness. This was a land not defined by abundance, but by elemental scarcity. The first truth was poverty. Its soils are ancient, leached of minerals. Unlike continents refreshed by volcanic ash or glacial grind, Australia's earth was old, flat, and tired. The very elements life needs, phosphates, nitrates, iron, were locked deep in the bedrock. They were treasures guarded jealously beneath the red dust. To live here was to fight for every nutrient. This set a different tempo to evolution, one of extreme efficiency. Creatures became masters of recycling, of hoarding every resource. Life grew slowly, built tough shells and leaves, and waged chemical warfare underground as much as above. And upon these poor, dusty lands fell the second great truth: thirst. Water was never guaranteed. Rain was more rumor than promise. Life was not choreographed around rivers, but around dry creek beds and fragile, shrinking waterholes. The entire ecosystem was tethered to just a few patches of water. These oases, often miles apart, became the entire stage for existence. They were like a bank, a market, a church, and an executioner's block all in one. Every creature, from burrowing insects to lumbering diprotodon, eventually had to make a pilgrimage to these watering holes. There, the last few drops meant everything. Herbivores drank beside predators, each vulnerable to the other's glance. It was an arena of inevitable confrontation and desperation. The survival chain was pulled tight around these shrinking pools. And finally, into this parched world crept the third great force: fire. In this dry, hot land, fire was not an accident. It was a driving force of evolution. It became a season. The air itself, heavy with the oily, volatile oil of eucalyptus, was ready to explode. A single lightning bolt or a careless spark was not a mere campfire. It was an inferno that could race across the continent. Picture a towering wall of flame, hundreds of feet high, moving like a monster through the bush. The heat would be so fierce it sterilized the soil, the roar of the burn louder than thunder. It was a fiery filter through which life had to pass. To survive here, life had to embrace the fire, and so it did. Trees evolved bark as thick as battle armor, a foot deep in some cases, protecting the living wood within. Seeds lay dormant in hard shells that would only crack open when heated by fire, ensuring the next generation sprouted in nutrient-rich ash. From this crucible emerged not tropical jungles of broad, soft leaves, but a kingdom of toughness. A sclerophyll forest, from the Greek hard leaf, dominated. Oaks and maples might rule elsewhere, but here the kings are eucalyptus and acacia, trees of twisted strength. The great gum tree, for example, has leaves far from tender palm fronds. They are vertical, leathery daggers hanging to the sky, a desperate design to avoid the punishing sun. These leaves are more chemical weapon than lunch. They are thin on nutrition, but filled with a fragrant, flammable oil. This oil is the tree's blood and poison. It deters insects and other eaters. On a still, hot day, the forest air turns bluish and scented with this oil, a beautiful, calm haze, and an invisible invitation to a blaze. Australia, in its furnace, did not create easy life. It built a land of armor and endurance. Every plant was a fortress. Every animal had to be the same. The trees, spiky shrubs, and hardened leaves all told the same story. Survival here meant holding on to everything, growing slowly, and preparing for the fire and the drought. In this way, Australia became the harshest stage on Earth. From the marsupial wombat, the size of an elephant, to the flightless goose, the size of a refrigerator, to the monitors and crocs of nightmare proportions. Every creature was forged by that furnace. And yet, in this land of unfathomable giants and unrelenting elements, we, tiny humans, appeared and prevailed. We learned to read the red dirt, to follow the seasons, to survive around waterholes when everyone else had to keep their wits about them. We even hunted some of those megafauna, turning beasts into dinner and science. Perhaps in the end, we became the toughest creation of this continent. The question that remains simmering in this hot, ancient air is, why? Why did this lonely island craft a world of such relentless danger? What force in Earth's history shaped such extremes? In this vast, fire-tempered realm, every shadow and every gust of wind holds a reminder of our fragility in deep time. And perhaps that is the biggest mystery of all, one that still stirs unanswered at the horizon of this long-lost world. Imagine stepping into a forest where even the leaves fight back. Instead of soft green fronds, every branch wears armor. Acacias and wattles stand like medieval knights with spiky shields. They have no chemical weapons, but they don't need them. Their leaves have turned into hardened spikes, and every branch is lined with a relentless array of thorns. It's as if the entire vegetation enrolled in a porcupine convention, all armored and ready for defense. This is not a buffet laid out for easy eating. It's a locked pantry full of poison and hard-to-digest fiber. Life here unfolds in a fortress garden. We feel dust on our boots and the hot sun on our backs as we imagine an animal trying to nibble at those leaves. The continent's bounty is one of survival, not comfort. The plants have set the terms, and they demand respect. It is the base of the food chain, not a generous feast, but a locked pantry of toxins and thorns. Every meal is a trial. In this hardened garden, only the toughest or the hungriest dare to eat. What kind of creature could survive here? We can almost taste the dryness in the air. Even the wind seems harsh, carrying flecks of dust and the sharp scent of gum oils. Every leaf and twig is a challenge. This hostile, armored flora shapes the entire ecosystem. The simple fact of botany here is, a plant protects itself, and the animals adapt or perish. Here, every meal feels like picking a fight. Only those with stomachs of iron or desperation make it out alive. Could any creature call this spiky garden home? Eating a meal here was no picnic. Imagine trying to live on nails and poison, an impossible feat for most animals. A creature could not be a simple, fast-moving grazer. It needed guts like a chemistry lab and a furnace. In this land, survival meant being a slow, patient powerhouse. We picture an animal moving as though it has a small factory in its belly, constantly brewing and burning through toxins. Every step feels deliberate, every chew a long project. It is a living wood chipper. The kingdom of armor and poison shaped its rulers. It demanded an animal built like a slow cooker, not a microwave. The herbivores that could manage this were slow and cumbersome. They weren't sprinters, they were marathoners, but of a different kind. Their metabolic rate was cool and deliberate. They had huge fermentation vats in their guts, where bacteria worked overtime on fibrous leaves and toxins. It's as though their bodies were alchemical labs, pulling energy from wood and poison. Imagine a wombat, the size of a small car, heavy limbs, shaggy fur, moving slow and steady. It would crunch through thorns and eucalyptus bark as though snacking on popcorn, one piece at a time. Every muscle was about endurance, every step a cautious, efficient grind. This creature had to endure months of drought and fires. It was built to survive, not to escape. Here, survival went to those who could wait out the worst. Could anything like this exist? Life on this ancient land forced a new gamble on motherhood. Placental mammals, the ancestors of lions and wolves and us, invest everything up front. They carry their babies inside, a long siege on the mother's body. Pregnancy is like carrying a heavy suitcase on a journey that could be dangerous. It is a bet that food and water will last for months. If the world flips, that investment could go up in smoke. Marsupials, by contrast, bet much less. Their pregnancy is short and light. When a baby is born, it's more like a promise than a finished product, a tiny, blind jelly bean. We often see it as an embryo, pink and vulnerable. Its one heroic act is crawling into its mother's pouch to finish growing. It's as if nature invented a portable nursery outside the womb. This difference is the key to surviving the fires and droughts of this land. The pouched baby is basically a half-finished work, a tiny crawl and cling miracle. It's more embryo than infant, a jelly bean of life. Life on this continent is so unpredictable that investing everything in a 9-month pregnancy could be fatal. A placental mother carrying a heavy load is like someone jogging in quicksand. Every step is a risk. If disaster comes, firestorm or drought, she and her baby could both die, leaving their entire genetic line as dust. Marsupial mothers play it cooler. They give birth to a tiny, pink, blind embryo, which then tucks safely into the pouch. The real long pregnancy happens outside the womb, in that warm pocket of safety. This means the mother's body doesn't carry the whole pregnancy at once. She can abort the mission if she must, sacrificing only the tiny embryo to save herself. This is the genius of the pouch, an evolutionary escape hatch in a world of surprise disaster. Which gamble pays off in such a land? Imagine the continent on fire. A wall of flame sweeps through the eucalyptus forest in an afternoon. It's as if the sun has fallen to earth and set everything ablaze. A heavily pregnant placental mother caught in this inferno would be doomed. She's already weighed down by a near-term fetus. She's slow and heavy, like a marathon runner carrying too much luggage and dashing for a train that's already gone. The fire's heat cracks over her. Ash rains on her fur. There's no escape. If she falls, both mom and baby are lost, reduced to cinders. Now imagine a marsupial mother in that same burning forest. Her pregnancy is tiny, just an embryo clinging to a teat in the pouch. The firestorm looms, and her body makes a brutal choice. It can abandon the microscopic baby to save its own life. She literally walks away, leaving that little jelly bean behind. She sacrifices nearly nothing to preserve the most important thing, the mother. She saves the factory of life to live and breed again. In that moment, the genius of the pouch is undeniable. Which reproductive gamble survives the flame? This is the genius of the pouch. It is an evolutionary escape hatch in a world of unending disaster. In a severe drought, every drop of water counts, and every strategy is tested. Imagine a placental mother and her full-grown baby clinging to life by a water hole. She has spent months bearing that well-developed baby. Now she must produce milk to keep it alive. The world turns hot and dry, and the milk keeps flowing. She wastes away, and so does her offspring. Both starve together. A marsupial mother in the same drought has other choices. Her baby is a tiny embryo in the pouch. If needed, her body simply flips a switch and stops the milk. She sacrifices the tiny embryo, letting it die quietly in the pouch. She is then left alone, alive, weary, but capable of wandering in search of life-giving rain. This one flexible design means she can endure until the world changes. Her strategy is low risk and resilient. If you were betting on survival, whose hand do you think Mother Nature holds? With this single evolutionary twist, marsupials became the only show on Earth. They filled every empty niche. They burrowed, they climbed, they prowled, but above all, they had a mission: conquer the sclerophyll kingdom. They needed to find a way to eat the unpalatable and grow fat on a diet of thorns and oils. Surviving on wood and poison required more than just a pouch. It required size and an even bigger digestive furnace. They had to become both giant and efficient at the same time. Imagine a kangaroo built like a moving armory, or a wombat as large as a car. They bulked up as if preparing for the world's biggest strongman competition, feeding on what would poison any other animal. The only blueprint nature provided was still that pouch. They doubled down on the pouch and the gut, turning them into tools for dominance. No predators remained here to challenge their bulk. It became a world where bigger was better and slow was safe. For thousands of years, this was the unbeatable formula: low risk, giant payoff. The next chapter of evolution would give Australia something it had never seen before, and soon, one of these giants would rise to be king of them all. The age of these colossal marsupials crowned a new ruler. It was not speed or claws that won at the throne, but pure size. The biggest of them all was Diprotodon. Imagine a wombat on steroids, as big as a rhinoceros, yet wearing coarse fur and small, deep-set eyes. It was a moving mountain of flesh, 4 tons of slow, patient digestion. Diprotodon was to Australia what the rhino or hippo is to Africa, a titan built on a humble blueprint. Its closest living relative is the modest wombat, but this creature stretched that wombat design to the limit, building a giant so large It seems almost mythical. Its body was a marvel of nature's engineering. A barrel-shaped torso housed a vast digestive chamber, like a moving fermentation vat on legs. It had broad, flat molars that could grind tough eucalyptus leaves into pulp over days. Its two great incisors projected forward, constantly worn down by stripping bark and chomping wood. We must imagine it lumbering through the gum tree forest. Its steps were heavy thuds that cracked the red earth beneath it. A diprotodon's gaze would have been calm, maybe even a bit simple. It probably didn't think much about predators. Its own size was its only defense. It was a gentle giant in an unforgiving land. Its existence was an act of geological patience, a testament to the power of slow growth. It wandered the plains, feeding in immense volume. No predator could easily bring down something this colossal. But in the hush of the ancient forest, even giants can feel unnoticed. What secrets did this mammoth wombat carry on its broad back? For Diprotodon, life was about consumption, not combat. Its days were a relentless, slow process of eating. Imagine a refrigerator the size of a barn, open 24 hours a day. That was its gut. It spent hours munching unpalatable leaves. It was not picky. Selective eating was a luxury it couldn't afford. To feed that enormous body, volume was the rule. It would pull up whole shrubs by their roots and grind trees with its massive molars. The forest was its kitchen, and it dined ceaselessly. Its metabolism was a cool, patient fire that smoldered for days. The sclerophyll kingdom demanded this. Diprotodon was its very embodiment. It was a fermenting vat on legs, turning wood and toxin into life itself. Every bite was an act of geological patience. It changed the forest simply by eating it. We can almost see it plodding under blue eucalyptus light, its shaggy brown body slowly moving like a living caravansary. Its breath billowed puffs of warm air. The jaws worked methodically, snapping off bark and tearing fronds. Day after day it wandered, an unstoppable harvester. The forest was rebuilt in its image. Wherever it roamed, cleared patches and broken shrubs told the story. It was not a hunter waiting to pounce. It was the landscape moving. This creature shaped the land by consumption alone. What mark did such a relentless eater leave on the ancient forests? The fossil record at Lake Calabana tells of an epic ending. Here, hundreds of these giants rest in silence together. They died side by side, a mass grave of ancient herds. They seem to have succumbed to a mega drought, the last muddy puddle, the only water left in the salt pan. Imagine the scene. Dozens of Diprotodon huddled around shrinking mud, drinking their fill, and then never leaving. When the rains didn't come, the herd collapsed here in the mud. It's like finding the ruins of a rock concert of giants, all in the same final moment. These were not lone wanderers, but a slow-moving herd. Imagine 20 of these 4-ton giants inching across the dusty plains together. Their massive bodies sank into the mud as they drank. No predator would haunt this tableau. The predators, if any, were history. This was as collective an end as their lives had been. Their footprints became highways. Their collapse became muddy monuments of survival's cost. When they walked, even riverbeds hardened beneath their weight. All that remains of their journey are these clues: paths, mud, and bones in salt. If Diprotodon shaped the forests by eating, what did armies of giants do to the rest of the land? Their realm was relentless. They were the architects of pathways and clearings. Their legacy in the red earth persists. How did the creatures smaller than giants cope? We must now look to another giant and its strange competitors to find out. Even giants had rivals. The dry open plains had room for a new kind of kangaroo, one that rewrote the rulebook. Kangaroos, the symbol of Australia, are built to hop. They're living springs of muscle and grace. But in this world, the blueprint changed. It gave us Procoptodon Goliath. Imagine a kangaroo 3 meters tall when reaching for the sky, a body so dense it looked like a musculature of pure iron. It was broad-shouldered and heavy-set. Its face was no gentle doe. It was short, blunt, like a boxing glove masquerading as a nose. Its jaws were deep, its molars massive, a grinding mill made for tough, oily leaves. Its arms were long and powerful, ending in 2 strong fingers. These were not the delicate arms of a hopper. They were grappling hooks for high-hanging branches. And those feet, think not of springy hop, but of solid stomp. Each foot had a single big toe with a hoof-like nail. It walked instead of leapt, bearing its weight on a thick tail as a third leg. It was the kangaroo turned into a gentle giant. It could reach leaves at treetop height that even Diprotodon could not. Yet it walked slowly, like a knight in plodding armor. It was as if a grand piano learned to walk upright, powerful, heavy, and utterly alien. In its moving, one could almost hear the forest adapting around it. In this vertical game of reaching for leaves, who was its greatest competitor or foe? But the high canopy contest didn't belong to mammals alone. In the same dry forests roamed a feathered giant, Dromornis, nicknamed Mihirung, the demon duck of doom. Calling it a duck is misleading. It was a bird built for a different era. Imagine a 3-meter-tall goose with a body like a linebacker. It weighed as much as a small car, well over half a ton. This was a flightless titan with a massive frame. Its body must have been covered in coarse feathers, its legs thick as tree trunks. The key to its terror was its head. The skull was solid bone, thick and heavy. At the end was the bill. Not a flat, floppy duck bill, but a deep, sharp-edged blade. It was like carrying a cleaver on your face. This bill could shear wood or shatter bone with ease. Decades of study debated its purpose. Was Dromornis a peaceful browser nibbling tough leaves, or a feathered predator using that beak as a weapon? Its brain was small, but its potential for violence was not. This demon bird remains an unresolved mystery. And so we ask, was it just a gentle giant, or something much more frightening? But ancient Australia was not a monotonous desert. It had edges of green and water too. Along coastlines and river floodplains lay slow winding rivers and deep billabongs. This was a world of mud and reeds, of damp forests where grass grew lush and unpoisonous. Shade was plentiful and water never far away. In these softer, wetter margins lived a different kind of giant, Zygomaturus, the marsupial hippo. Imagine a wombat turned hippopotamus. It was 4-legged and barrel-chested, with a massive torso like a small car floating in water. Its body was soaked in river mud, its fur thick and greasy from the wet. It fed on succulent river plants, blades of grass and reeds that weedy dinosaurs might envy. Its head was broad and strange, crowned with short, blunt horns above its eyes. This 4-horned beast waded through the swamp, as out of place there as a hippo on a golf course. In this world of willows and lilies, it was the gentle giant of the marsh. Its massive barrel body needed water and soft plants to sustain it. Walking through the shallows, it would create great sucking splashes, almost like a diving hippo. It was largely safe from fire in this swampy refuge. Here, there was always water. Here, there was always food. It dug up roots and sedges with its broad, shovel-like snout. But this green sanctuary had its own hazards. In the deep, murky water, other great predators waited. Another unusual giant shared these waters, a truly ancient line. To find out who, we look for creatures armored not for speed, but for impregnable defense. The water was his refuge, but did that make him safe? What other ancient beast prowled these reed-choked waters? The swamp indeed had its armored ruler. It was Meolania, the great tank of prehistory. Imagine a turtle the size of a small car. Its shell a domed castle of solid bone. But this was no ordinary turtle. Its armor had armor. Its tail was a long club encased in rings of bone and tipped with spikes, a weapon of pure defense. Its head was so heavily armored that it could not hide inside the shell. Two long, curving horns swept backward from its skull like a bull's. Meolania did not retract for safety. It simply stared down threats. This was a walking fortress, utterly impervious. It shared the river's edge with the marsupial hippo, grazing alongside. Together, they formed a most unlikely pair. This slow-moving wonder looked like a relic from an ancient legend. Where such armor exists, evolution leaves a clue. It was living in a world that demanded it. What could possibly threaten something so invulnerable? One could almost chuckle at the sight. A turtle with horns like a mythological beast. It lumbered through the shallows, oblivious. Armed with barbed tail and horned helmet, it was the ultimate survivor. The world it inhabited was still brutal, but it chose armor over speed. This living tank probably felt almost nothing of the scuffles around it. It grazed peacefully on aquatic plants as if protected by a magic force field. But life this armored can be lonely. There were no predators left that could touch it. Its greatest enigma is why nature built it so fearsome in a world at peace with its bulk. In this era, what was Meolania protecting itself against? We owe our knowledge to those who uncovered the past. At places like Lake Calabana, paleontologists kneel in the bone-dry mud. They carefully brush away red dust from colossal femurs and skull fragments. The air smells of earth and ancient bone dust. Every break in the rock seems to whisper a secret of these beasts. Under bright sun, giant vertebrae gleam like weathered logs. It's like digging in a forgotten bedroom of the continent's history. Each tool stroke is gentle, respectful. Researchers feel the rough ridges of Diprotodon ivory, marveling at its age. They compare it to a living elephant tusk in size. These fossils are our direct link to that world. Holding a 4-ton limb bone is humbling. It connects us to a time when giants walked. It makes the worlds we've imagined all the more real. Even the smallest hoof prints in stone hint at a scene. These scientists work like detectives, piecing together bones into skeletons, reconstructing a lost world. Inside air-conditioned labs, the smell of glue and stone mixes with fragments of fossil. Each identified bone reshapes our understanding of these giants. And as they lift a complete skull into sunlight, one wonders, how did such creatures really live? These discoveries fuel our imagination. Standing up with a fossil skull feels like holding history in your hands. How wild it is that from dirt and bone, we learn their secrets. Every discovery is a miracle that bridges ages, leaving us in awe of nature's grandeur. One day, all this ended. The giants vanished in a changing world. The drum of extinction rolled across the land. We are left to wonder what tipped the balance. Was it climate, fire, or something else? It might have been the relentless droughts at the end of the Ice Age. Picture the sky filling with smoke and ash, the waterholes drying faster than ever before. Little islands of water remained in the rivers, and the once green plains baked hard. Amidst this chaos, even the mighty struggled. Perhaps humans played a part. Clever hunters stalking these slow movers. Imagine an ancient aboriginal hunter watching a diprotodon herd from a distance, flame in hand, across the savannah. The first campfires of humanity might have edged the giants out of hiding. Whatever the cause, the giants grew scarce, their thundering footsteps fading into memory. Now only fossils and stories remain. We, their distant heirs, can only ask, what will we do with the lessons of their extinction? If fire set by hunters drove them to the brink, nature might have delivered the final blow. A dramatic shift in climate poured another deluge of drought. Imagine the ancient horizon turned blood red by endless bushfires. As the landscape transformed, these once mighty creatures had nowhere left to hide. Slowly, their songs of survival fell silent. It was as if a great symphony of giants had reached its final note. Now we live in a world made by their absence. The red dust at our feet is shaped by their story. What responsibility do we hold for carrying on their legacy? We stand on the shoulders of giants, yet the ground feels fragile beneath us. Are we any safer now? The silent question remains. Will we dare to listen? The whispers grow louder in the silence of history. Will we hear them? In the quiet that follows, the legacy of giants haunts us still. We stand on their shoulders, but cast long shadows of our own. As night falls and stars spin overhead, a new dawn awaits. What will the next chapter of Earth's story look like? The last word of this tale has not been written. The Melania crouches like a stone gone suddenly alive. Imagine a rounded fortress the size of a small car, its shell mottled and pitted, sitting in slow, patient silence. Short sentence. Imagine one of us trying to tip that shell with a sapling, graceless and futile. A brief laugh because the image is absurd. A human scale joke to anchor the scale. A toddler would be no pest to this armored island veteran. Look at the shell up close. Layered plates like hammered iron. Seams tight as if riveted by time. We can feel the fossil dust on the glove of the paleontologist, the fine grit that tastes like old bones and sunlight. Zoom out. The Melania's armor is not decoration. It is an answer written in bone and keratin to a hungry, crushing question. What could bite, pry, or break this living vault? What predator, what blunt, bone-shattering force would make such over-engineering the only path to survival? The shell is a fossilized verdict, a cold, literal sentence carved into evolution itself. The continent itself was a laboratory written in marsupial ink. Short sentence. It experimented with size and idiosyncrasy with the casual cruelty of evolution. A light, odd joke. Think of a prehistoric wombat trying to wear a rhinoceros's shoes. The visual lands. Giant, lumbering herbivores moved like slow landslides through dry gum forests. bodies stuffed with toxin-tolerant guts and thistles. This was not moderation, it was amplification. Small, familiar blueprints pushed to bewildering scale. Take the koala, the icon of sluggish innocence. In our time, we see a drowsy, eucalyptus-numbing leaf specialist, a 13-pound creature that seems designed by a nap. But in the past, its cousin, which we call by the name Sturton's giant koala, was a dramatically different machine. Imagine a tree dweller the size of a stocky sheep, perhaps 1/3 larger than its modern kin, a ponderous fermentation vat, chewing and re-chewing poison into fragile calories. Humor. Picture a koala who needs a pension plan to process its lunch. As size grew, the treetops ceased to be sanctuaries and became precarious platforms. Short sentence. The heavy koala's life may have shifted groundward, shuffling awkwardly between giant gum trees. Visual. We can almost see one crossing a sunlit forest floor, limbs bowed, belly low, chewing with deliberate, enzymatic slowness. Its chemical haze was a biological sedative, its steps slow as a clock wound down. Humor. It would be the last animal you'd want to challenge in a race, unless you loved suspense. On the ground, it became prey. Vulnerability is a vivid image, a big, chemically numbed package of calories, with no speed, no armor, no teeth built for battle. The landscape of giants, the wombat rhino, the walking kangaroo, the demon duck, the swamp hippo, turned into walking larders, their flesh added up across the continent into a veritable banquet. Imagine millions upon millions of kilograms of slow food moving through a parched, gum-scented world. That abundance created a yawning evolutionary problem, an open niche hungry for a specialized killer. And invent it did. In the isolated, pouched world, a new kind of killer took shape, not by borrowing the familiar cat or dog design, but by twisting what was on hand. Humor. Picture evolution rummaging in a toolbox labeled wombats and shrugging, then producing a sharpened, terrifying instrument. The result was a paradox, a predator with a pouch. Phylocarnifex, the marsupial lion, is the whispered name of that solution. This was not a long-limbed sprinter. Imagine a barrel-chested offender, the compact power of a bulldog crossed with a small bear, low to the ground and built like a battering ram. Short sentence. Its anatomy reads like a manual of brute force. It was an ambush specialist, coiled power, not graceful chase. Humor. Imagine a couch that bites back. At rest, the contradiction is almost tender. The mother's pouch sheltered blind, jelly bean infants, warm and helpless. A brutal killer, cradling perfect vulnerability. The image is both savage and profoundly gentle. The juxtaposition is unsettling. A death dealer who is also a nursing parent. The skull tells the rest of the story. It is a lesson in unlearning our feline biases. Where a cat's head is built for fangs, this skull is built like an industrial clamp. Short sentence. The long canine daggers are missing. Instead, the incisors at the front, transformed from gnawing tools into massive, forward-jutting blades, work as bolt cutters. Imagine the front of the face shaped into a pair of living shears. Humor anchor. Not a toothbrush, but a crowbar for meat. Muscle anchors flare across wide cheekbones, providing room for enormous masseter muscles. The biomechanics are brutal and precise. Studies model a bite force that, pound for pound, may have been the highest among mammals. a crushing, catastrophic snap capable of shearing bone like paper. Its molars were reduced to long, scissoring blades, a single vertical motion optimized for dismemberment. Short sentence. The mouth was a vertical guillotine, but jaws tell only half the tale. The creature's forelimbs were grappling engines. Visual detail. Imagine forearms like the trunks of small trees, wrists thick, fingers flexible and capable of a terrifying embrace. Each thumb carried a single, enormous, recurved claw, curved like a hook and sharp as a blade. It was both climbing pick and meat hook. Humor. Imagine a butcher's hook attached to a plush mitt. Combine grappling arms with bolt-cutter jaws, and you have a deadly choreography. The thylo would ambush from above, letting gravity itself become a weapon. Short sentence. Picture a heavy shape pressed flat against the bark of an immense gum branch, indistinguishable from shadow and lichen. Then a drop, not a leap, but a calculated fall, the predator landing with the concentrated force of its mass onto a passing giant kangaroo. The initial impact would be a sudden, concussive weight, followed by the clawed embrace that turned weight into captivity. Fossil evidence supports this horror. In cave dens, we find articulated remains and vertebrae scored with clean, V-shaped notches, the unmistakable signature of a bolt-cutter bite. Short sentence. The graveyard speaks with blunt, anatomical handwriting. What we read is efficient specialization, a perfected method of killing that leaves little drama in the bones. But evolution is rarely satisfied with one answer. The same continent produced another pouched killer with a different philosophy: endurance, patience, and psychological attrition. This was Thylacinus, the ghost hunter. Do not let images of 20th century cages fool you. The last starving survivors were epilogues, not the main story. The primeval Thylacinus was a lithe, wolf-sized endurance machine. Visual. Think of a lean runner with a stiff marsupial tail, stripes like a watercolor wash down its back, and a head built for yawning wide. Its jaw was strange, not for crushing but for engulfing, able to open to an extraordinary angle. Humor. Imagine a predator yawning politely while your heart stops. The hunt was a test of persistence. At dusk, the ghost would begin, choosing a mid-sized grazer. It did not sprint. It trotted with metronomic resolve. The target bolts and bolts again, but the Thylacinus keeps coming, step after unhurried step, never wasting energy. The kangaroo's bursts shorten. Its recoveries lengthen. Hours pass. Muscles burn and acid builds. Finally, exhaustion wins. The final capture is bureaucratic in its efficiency. The prey collapses. The hunter completes the quiet, surgical work of the kill. These two predators, the vertical assassin and the patient chaser, were the apex of an isolated experiment. They exploited the continent's abundance of naive, slow-moving megafauna. Short sentence. They were sovereignty incarnate across millions of years. Humor. Imagine them having royal portraits, velvet and all, with eucalyptus crowns, yet a deeper question hangs in the air like dust. Apex today does not mean forever. The apparent balance that crowned these rulers depended on an ecosystem that was both rich and precarious. What would happen if that balance shifted? What unseen force could topple a dynasty that had perfected killing in two different architectures? We close this section looking up. Visual. Giant gum crowns cut the pale sky into lacy silhouettes. the canopy trembling with the weight of leaf and bone. The paleontologist's trowel scrapes soft, chalky sediment. The smell of old bone dust rises like a memory. Short sentence. And in the sticky, cool dark of a den, we read the last moments of prey and predator alike. Question: what would arrive to upset this well-honed order? Now imagine walking the fossil ground where these dramas played out. The excavation pit yawns like an open mouth. A trowel skitters across compressed leaf mold and brittle bone, and the mud clings to the boots with the tenacity of an old story. Short sentence. The smell is a weird mineral perfume, dry, faintly sweet, like bones warmed and dusted. Humor. You will not bring home a souvenir. The mud will own your sneakers for weeks. Visualize the palimpsest of trails carved into the soil by ponderous herds. These were highways and bottlenecks, the arteries of a continent. In the soft earth, we see wheel-like hollows where hips and bellies dragged, and in intermittent pools we find the flattened prints of footpads and the grazer's heavy, hoof-like marks. From above, this would have been a tapestry of movement. From the ground, it is a garden of chewed leaves and dropped seed. Short sentence. The walkers shaped the land as much as the land shaped them. Think of a swamp at dusk, wide and steaming, a hippo of the marsh, breathing in slow bursts and wallowing amid reeds. The light tastes of iron and smoke. A small scientist wades, net in hand, and pulls up a bone slick with the slick sheen of algae. Humor. Archaeologists do not always look glamorous. The water is busy. It shelters crocodilian ambushers, slide-bodied lizards that patrol the shallows, and occasional armored turtles that, like floating turrets, become islands of inedible procrastination. Another scene. Amber, fossilizing as sugary sap dripped and trapped insects in slow syrup. The trapped flies and beetles are frozen in a golden, suspended panic. The scent of resin is sharp in our imagination. We hold the shard and watch a tiny leg twitched for an eternal instant. These microfossils are reasoned whispers, telling of pollination, of leaf chemistry, of seasonal cycles now fossilized into jeweled time. Short sentence. Humor. It's the ultimate insect photography, minus the photographer. Let us return to the killers. Consider the soundscape of a night ambush. The forest breathes, leaves rasp, the scent lines shift with the wind. The thyllo, pressed to bark, is a living shadow. Then the fall, a massive thump, the air compressed, a smell of crushed hair and hot gut. The hunter's muscles coil and then relax like a released spring. The victim's last noises are not dramatic roars, but the small, human-like flailing of a body surprised into silence. Short sentence. What does that feel like at ground level? Now the endurance hunt in detail. Follow the Thylacinus across miles of scrub and dune, under a sky the color of old copper. The hunter's breathing is economical, its lungs attuned bellows. At first it is invisible, a shadow that becomes a shape, that becomes an intent. The prey's anaerobic bursts are glorious, but expensive. Each sprint leaves a mark on muscles and a debt payable in lactic acid. Hours pass. The landscape becomes a measured battlefield. Humor. This is the predator who wins the argument by not arguing at all. These micro-scenes connect outward, the architecture of teeth to the composition of bone breakage, the marks on vertebrae to the predator's method, the distribution of dens to social behavior. Short sentence. Every fossil is a sentence fragment of behavior, and a patient reader can stitch them into story. But who was reading? The rocks recorded, but no one translated until we came with trowels and lamps. Picture a den, cool, chalky, and lined with the detritus of meals. Bones lie like discarded tools, fur pellets matted into a pillow, and the air tastes of stale breath and iron. Short sentence, a curious humor. The nursery smell is both homely and macabre, like laundry day in a slaughterhouse. In such dens, the thylo arranged its life. Kills dragged in, cached, and fed to young between hunts. Visual detail. Saliva-darkened bone piles glisten in torchlight. How did the adult teach the young to use bolt-cutter jaws? Social notes. Some dens show multiple adults' marks and overlapping bone caches, hinting at cooperative behavior. Other sites are solitary and territorial. Short sentence. The evidence is messy, like a courtroom with scattered testimony. Humor. Imagine arguing over a leg of kangaroo like a vulture at a picnic. Did Thylo hunt alone, in pairs, or as family units? The traces tease but do not answer. Juveniles grew in the pouch and then graduated to practice kills. Imagine a small, awkward Thylo pup learning to grapple with a fruit-like training carcass. Its first attempts are clumsy and comical. Short sentence. We see wear patterns on juvenile claws that suggest play turned practical. The fossil record catches these hints. A juvenile humerus shows muscle attachments changing with age. What was the timeline from blind pouchling to ambush expert? Movement corridors mattered. Herds funneled through choke points, and predators learned those lines like postal routes. Short sentence. The ancient road system of the continent shaped predator strategies. A narrow gorge became a natural trap, a waterhole an insurance against waste. Humor. Evolution is just bad planning made permanent. Which of these corridors proved most dangerous, and which offered refuge? Now consider climate's hand. The continent's shifting rainfall turned forests into sparser woodlands, and then into open shrub. Short sentence. Plants evolved, and so did digestive tricks. The great herbivores faced a two-front war, changing food chemistry and the relentless tooth of the predator. Visual. Cracked riverbeds, salt pans flaring white in sunlight, the skin of megafauna caked with dried mud. How slowly must climate act before an apex predator's throne becomes a tomb? Next, think about competition beyond mouths, parasites, disease, and reproductive bottlenecks. Short sentence. A heavy koala packed with toxins is still a host for ticks, and a die-off can cascade. Humorous aside, nature's bureaucracy includes tiny, unhelpful clerks called parasites. Did invisible biological paperwork fill the docket for extinction? Humans arrive on the stage like a new element in a chemical reaction. They are not a single, sudden blow, so much as a slow but pervasive pressure, changing fire regimes, hunting patterns, and new pathogens hitching a ride. Short sentence. Imagine the first human footfall. Careful, deliberate, light compared to a mammoth, but smart and transformative. How do we read the first human marks among teeth and claw on the bones? This is not a tidy narrative. The record is a palimpsest of competing causes. Short sentence. With each layer peeled back, we find more complexity, more heartbreak. The question remains, Which force finally topples the twin kings? The vertical assassin and the tireless ghost. In the preparation lab, the story becomes tactile. A fossil is coaxed from matrix with a steady hand and a tiny rotary tool. The air fogs with fine powder that tastes of stone and old summers. Short sentence. The lab smells of solvent and menthol. A lamp throws a warm circle on a bone as meticulous fingers tease sediment away. Humor. Fossil prep is 90% patience and 10% tiny wheel of terror. Visual detail. A rib, mottled and hairline cracked, slowly reveals its growth rings like the pages of a weathered book. Each specimen taught us different lessons. A jaw fossil, with its front incisor clipped at a precise angle, told us about bite mechanics. A pelvis bent in a peculiar way suggested heavy, weight-bearing limbs adapted to forest ladders. Short sentence. The paleontologist's notes are a lexicon of small mysteries. We map muscle scars, infer motion, and reconstruct a life from chips and stains. What secrets remained hidden in tiny striations visible only under magnification? Migration scenes are among the most cinematic. Herds press like living tides across an open plain, tails and ears marking rhythm, stomachs rumbling with toxic, fibrous foliage. Short sentence. The march is punctuated by water stops and fraying edges where juveniles lag. Predators waited as naturally as the sun set. Humor. A herd is a communal grocery cart, and predators are the bored clerks with sharpened incentives. Which migratory path was the deadliest? And how often did a single ambush rewrite a herd's fate? At the end of all this, the bones in our hands are both artifact and accusation. They accuse us of arrogance when we imagine simple stories. They force us to be patient readers. Short sentence, yet we are left with the shiver. These great, pouched predators and their prey were exquisitely adapted, and still they vanished. What unseen variables? A novel disease, a sequence of drought years, human-fire interactions, or a cascade of ecological feedbacks tipped the scales toward collapse. We must imagine the final scenes with the intimacy of touch. A scientist cradles a vertebra, its surface worn into tiny ridges by age and scavengers, and thinks of the animal that owned it. Short sentence. The tactile knowledge is intimate. A broken suture suggests a healed injury. A stamped groove suggests repeated predation, and the very residues in tooth enamel whisper of season and diet. Humor. No creature enjoys having its dental history discussed publicly, but bones tell no manners. Visualize the last twilight herd, a line of silhouettes stepping once, then twice, then never again. The air carries smoke from intentional burns or the briny bite of dust raised by drought. In the distance, a small band of human figures watches, not as conquerors so much as curious new actors in a long story. Their tools are sharp and their decisions are immediate. Short sentence. The question remains, did intelligence tip the balance? Or did it merely accelerate a slide already in motion? We leave you not with answers, but with the feeling of weight. The earth records, the fossils preserve, and our curiosity sifts through dust like a fine sieve. Humor. We are all part of the greedy species that reads bones and asks for more. The last word is a pair of questions that hang like dusk. What does it mean to be apex when climate, chance, and a new kind of animal can conspire? Who were the true authors of the extinction? A list of causes or a single decisive hand? We must imagine the final scenes with the intimacy of touch. A scientist cradles a vertebra, its surface worn into tiny ridges by age and scavengers, and thinks of the animal that owned it. Short sentence. The tactile knowledge is intimate. A broken suture suggests a healed injury. A stamped groove suggests repeated predation. And the very residues in tooth enamel whisper of season and diet. Humor. No creature enjoys having its dental history discussed publicly, but bones tell no manners. Visualize the last twilight herd. A line of silhouettes stepping once, then twice, then never again. The air carries smoke from intentional burns, or the briny bite of dust raised by drought. In the distance, a small band of human figures watches, not as conquerors, so much as curious new actors in a long story. Their tools are sharp, and their decisions are immediate. Short sentence. The question remains, did intelligence tip the balance? Or did it merely accelerate a slide already in motion? We leave you not with answers, but with the feeling of weight. The earth records, the fossils preserve, and our curiosity sifts through dust like a fine sieve. Humor. We are all part of the greedy species that reads bones and asks for more. The last word is a pair of questions that hang like dusk. What does it mean to be apex when climate, chance, and a new kind of animal can conspire? Who were the true authors of the extinction? A list of causes, or a single decisive hand? What echoes will hum back across the next 1 million years? Imagine standing at a watering hole under a blazing midday sun. Something impossible moves. A car-sized monitor lizard gliding through the shallows. It's silent, it's scaly, and suddenly you realize this place is ruled by a far older dynasty than any marsupial king. By night, the lion and the ghost, the marsupial lion and the Tasmanian tiger, are supposed to rule. But here in the white-hot light, even they shrink into the shadows. A tank-armored giant lurks at the edge of the water, watching with prehistoric patience. Its presence changes the very light, casting an atmosphere of pure, cold terror. Try explaining this to a friend. You'd say, "I just saw a lizard the size of a car drinking water." They'd laugh until they saw its tail twitch or felt the fear in your eyes. Water is life in this desert. Every drop is contested. Even the puddles and muddy ribbons belong to the reptiles now. The sun is a punishing white over a cracked, thirsty earth. Heat distorts the air above the scorched land. In this harsh noon, even the smallest creatures pause, heads down, sniffing for danger. It has no pouch or fur, just scales and the patience of a perfected predator. This creature makes everything else feel small. Its slow, measured breathing echoes the bloodless calm of millions of years of evolution. Every ripple and shadow whispers, "Here, the old blood rules the day." In this scorching world of giants, who dares share a drink with this armored titan? Something is wrong at the water's edge. What looks like a sun-bleached log has 4 legs and moves. For a second, you wonder if the world blinked. If someone hit fast forward on a nature movie, the movement is so slow and deliberate, it almost doesn't seem real. This is Megalania, Phareniae priscus, the ancient giant monitor. 7 meters long and weighing over a ton, it's like a goanna scaled up to the size of a large SUV. It's low-slung and armored from head to tail, each scale a plate of natural armor. This isn't the thundering monster of movie fame, but a cold, calculating predator with alien intelligence. It creeps forward in the shimmering dust, barely disturbing a grain of sand. Its ancient eyes are heavily lidded. Its forked, glistening tongue flicks out, reading the chemical story of the world. A hush falls over the waterhole. Even sunlight seems subdued under this gaze. Everything here is suspended in a tense silence, waiting to see what happens next. All life at the Waterhole holds its breath when it walks. Even the great marsupial lion drifts away, as if it just heard the boss walking by. Each step takes centuries. With every slow lurch, it speaks of an age when lizards ruled the earth. When Megalania steps out, the world itself seems to slow. Nothing dares move. Silence reigns. We wonder, what prey could dare challenge this walking shadow of death? This predator's power isn't in brute speed or force. It's in subtlety. It bites like a serpent, delivering a poison far deadlier than its teeth. Its mouth is a serrated saw blade, but the true horror hides in its saliva. Megalania was more dragon than lizard. Its teeth were merely the delivery system. When it strikes, it injects a cocktail of biological horror into the wound. A powerful anticoagulant prevents any wound from closing. Blood will pour endlessly. A hypertensive toxin triggers a sudden, catastrophic drop in blood pressure. A paralytic compound slowly unravels the victim's muscles and senses from the inside out. This venom is not designed for a quick finish. It's a long game of pain. For the giant lizard, the hunt needs no chase. It can afford to relax in the sun and wait. Imagine pulling free and sprinting away, thinking you're safe, only to have death creeping up inside you with every step. Even a mile of sprint isn't enough if death is already riding in your veins. For now it runs, but running only delays the inevitable. At first, the bitten animal feels alive, with adrenaline pumping, but the slow ticking venom has already sealed its fate. By the time the world grows hazy and the prey collapses, the killer could be miles away. When every heartbeat sends poison coursing deeper, what chance has its prey? We must imagine the scene at the Waterhole. At the Waterhole, everything freezes in stunned silence. The animals here feel the tension sharp as a knife. For a moment, you might half expect a wildlife cameraman to pop up and get the shot. The air is thick and tense as Megalania decides to strike. Suddenly, the giant lizard makes its move. It seizes the leg of a 4-ton behemoth, the giant wombat rhino called the Depredon, in its saw-toothed jaws. For an instant, everything freezes. The Depredon, caught by surprise, rears back in panic and pain. In a surge of adrenaline, it tears its leg free from the crushing grip. Bleeding heavily, the wounded beast crashes through the acacia scrub, eyes wide with terror. It is free, for now, and it charges away in blind panic. Megalania does not give chase. It has no need to waste energy on a run. It stands impassive, scanning the air with its forked black tongue, reading the scent of fear and blood. The hunt is already over, but no one here fully understands why. Why doesn't this monster pursue its prey? How could the fallen still think itself safe? For hours, nothing changes. The sun climbs higher, and the Waterhole returns to an uneasy calm. For hours we stand witness, restless under the relentless sun. From afar, we watch the wounded Depredon limping away, a trail of dark blood staining the red dust. Even the birds above stay silent. The usual cacophony is gone. A slow-motion shadow glides silently a few lengths behind. Megalania, patient and unhurried. Bit by bit, dizziness and weakness creep into the Depredon's heavy limbs. It slows, eyes rolling in panic. Every step grows harder than the last. Finally, it stumbles and collapses into the baking ground with a low, terrified groan. The wounded Depredon lies motionless, every breath a visible struggle. It is not dead, just utterly undone by the poison, panting in the aftermath. For a creature of its size, it's now, ironically, powerless. We tense as the giant lizard appears again at the edge of our vision. Megalania has found its prize. Its mountain of flesh is still breathing, blissfully unaware of its fate. The great predator makes no haste. The kill is already complete. For Megalania, it's just another lazy afternoon by the Waterhole. Now no creature will be tempted by these waters for some time. When will the final bite come? Only hunger and time will tell. This reptilian dynasty was far from one note. Out in the dry eucalyptus woods, a different nightmare stalked its prey. Imagine a crocodile that didn't lurk in water, but took up running on land. This was Quinkana, the terrestrial croc. Its body is taller, its legs longer and tucked under its frame, built for a shockingly fast chase across the dusty plain. Its teeth were not simple grappling hooks. They were flattened, serrated blades, made for slicing flesh. This was a monster that hunted in daylight, exploding from cover into a furious land sprint. Wherever it appeared, prey had no chance to relax. It had turned predation into high-speed pursuit. We can picture a giant kangaroo, a procopodon, striding through the forest, minding its own business. Suddenly, a crocodilian hellhound, 7 feet of teeth and muscle, bursts from hiding. The kangaroo doesn't stand a chance. The chase is on. In this savage sprint, even the quickest kangaroos are not safe. All that open space becomes a hunting ground with nowhere to hide. Who can hide or outrun a croc that gallops like the wind? The water itself held another ancient terror, a giant snake. This was Wanambi, the serpent king of the billabongs. 5 meters long and thick-bodied, it was muscle coiled beneath the surface. Its skull was primitive and sturdy, not built for the wide swallow of modern pythons, but perfect for one thing: ambush. It lay submerged and nearly invisible in the black water. All that broke the surface was a dark knot of scales and a pair of unblinking eyes. It was like a log that sprang to life. For an absurd instant, you might think you're in some bizarre nature cartoon. The wallaby steps forward to drink, unaware. In an instant, the snake strikes. Its teeth sink into the kangaroo's face and neck. In one fluid motion, the rest of its body flares upward. Muscle after muscle coils with hydraulic power, a living vice crushing the prey. No roar, only panic-filled splashes, then silence. In the gloom of the billabong, Wanambi reigned supreme. Who could survive a drink from these waters? But the snake was not the only danger lurking in the water. A bigger nightmare waited beneath the surface. The true tyrant of the rivers. We must imagine it. The 4-ton Depredon is alone at the edge of a pool, thirsty and unaware. Suddenly, the water itself erupts in an apocalypse of motion. The great crocodile Palomnarchus breaches with explosive force. Its head and spine launch out of the pool like a missile. Its jaws, lined with bone-crushing spikes, clamp around anything in range. There is no gentle warning. A thunderous crash and the water explodes. We watch as the massive bulk lands on its target. The Depredon is taken by surprise. The jaws clamp on its head or leg in an instant. Then comes the death roll. Palomnarchus spins, a vortex of pure rotational force, tearing muscle and bone apart. It is the final, brutal law of physics in action. It's a scene of pure terror. Here, the term Waterhole becomes an execution chamber. Now, no creature will be tempted by these waters for some time. Who would dare approach a pool after witnessing such a nightmare? In this brutal world, it felt as if the continent itself was gunning for you. This was the true, inescapable horror of prehistoric Australia. It wasn't one monster, but a deadly blockade. The land was ruled by the venomous shadow of megalania. The water was controlled by the bone-crushing terror of Palomnarchus. Every creature had to be a master of its own element to survive. The 4-ton Depredon, king of the forest, was forced to drink in the crocodile's realm. A great kangaroo might rule the forests, but find itself alone and helpless at the water's edge. And even mighty kangaroos must come down for a sip at their peril. No refuge existed on the ground or in the water. Both domains were death traps. Each choice, a step or a sip, weighed more than just life and death. It was a gamble with destiny. For now, the only dimension left unexplored might be above. Survival here is literally a matter of life or death. Who would dare be the next to make that choice? The nightmare climbs upward into the trees. It's easy to think of the forest canopy as a refuge, but here too lurked dread. Smaller cousins of megalania, the devil dragons, patrol the branches. They are 6-foot goannas with scaly hides and serrated teeth, built for life among the leaves. They possess the same arsenal of scales, serrated teeth, and that insidious, venom-laced bite. Their claws aren't only hooks, they're anchors, grasping the eucalyptus like a rock climber on speed. Imagine the pouched lion, the marsupial hunter itself, lying in wait on a branch. 10 feet behind it, another pair of colder eyes watches. A tree-dwelling goanna, stalking its mammalian cousin. For even here, no one is safe. The warm-blooded hunter itself becomes hunted. None could escape the cold calculus of this world. Death awaited in every corner of every layer of the forest. Who can find sanctuary when even the air turns hostile? The giants may be gone, but their silent successors are everywhere. In the pressure cooker of that watery oasis, small things wielded immense power. If a bite from a monster was a crisis, a bite from a tiny venomous creature was an apocalypse. For every creature here, strength was not enough to guarantee safety. Bite size became the most important measure of all. The only advantage was in venom. A tiny fang could be the equalizer. This was the crucible where Australia's deadliest poisons were forged. In those waters, even a brown snake or a small spider could fell the mightiest beast around. Every chase had its chemical counterpart, invisible agents of death. Modern Australia still carries this legacy. Its animals perfected a chemical arsenal in the age of giants. And one wonders, when the giants have vanished, will the venomous remain? Imagine brushing away millennia of dust to reveal the fractured remains of a titan. Here, at an excavation site in red earth, every fragment tells a story. Paleontologists work like detectives of deep time. Careful, gloved hands dust off a giant vertebra, then another, then a massive jawbone. Each find is a clue. The site may be quiet, but excitement hums through the team. Every fragment uncovered sparks goosebumps and wonder. The air is thick with the smell of ancient rock and fossilized bone dust. In the lab, grinding machines hum while technicians clean and piece together the skeleton. bones of a megalania or palomnarchus might be arranged on a table. It's an archaeological stage for the past. Each fossil casts light on its owner's life, how it moved, hunted, and died. In the gloom of the lab, we can almost hear the distant echoes of its world. Herds fleeing, predators closing in. These microfossils are like pages in a book of prehistory. They even contain the tiniest secrets: pollen from lost flowers, insects frozen in amber, bacteria on bone, trapped in golden glass and stone. Even the smallest players have a voice in this ancient saga. Each discovery raises new questions. What secrets did these giants keep buried in the earth? Long before these giants roamed, this land was shaped by cataclysm and drought. Dust devils could swirl into mini tornadoes on the open plains. Savanna grass once covered much of the interior, broken only by gnarled eucalyptus and red gums. Australia drifted into isolation, an oven set to high under the sun. The climate was unforgiving, an endless dry season, scorching days, and cold nights in the outback. Water became the treasure, rivers swelling only in rare storms. Sandstone landscapes and cracked earth bore witness to millennia of heat. The great inland sea had long vanished, leaving bones where fish once swam. In this desert crucible, life was refined by fire, and survival rules became extreme. Forests shrank and plains spread, forcing creatures together around those precious pools. Volcanoes in the past belched ash and reshaped the terrain, but time wore away their sound. All this set the stage, a world primed for giant lizards and cunning crocodiles to dominate. We wonder, what other secrets did this ancient landscape hide? Beyond the red earth, a different world thrived in the ancient seas surrounding this continent. These waters were home to monsters even more staggering than lizards on land. Imagine a 2-ton marine lizard, Kronosaurus, schooling among giant sharks. Plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, long-necked and finned, roamed beneath endless waves. Their teeth could shred fish as easily as a crocodile's could tear flesh. Giant ammonites floated like armored toys, and schools of ancient fish flickered through coral forests. In those primeval oceans, life depended on size and speed, much like on land. Fossil reefs and limestone beds now mark the places where these marine beasts ruled. Each fossil shell and spine carries a tale of silent oceans and titanic hunters. Who among them could rival the deadly legacy of the land? And what will we find next? In the shadows of giants, even the smallest creatures thrived or perished. The air buzzed with insects, giant dragonflies the size of birds, and ants marching in columns. Savanna grass once covered much of the interior, broken only by strange cycads and towering ferns. Forests blossomed with strange cycads and towering ferns, and eucalyptus groves began to dominate the landscape. Plants and insects form the foundation of these ecosystems, often unnoticed by predators above. In the underbrush, insects themselves were predators and prey. Some ants could deliver painful bites. Spiders waited in ambush for those ants. One day, an unlucky insect could be trapped in sap, a time capsule destined to become amber. Millions of years later, those shimmering gems still hold tiny windows into the past. Look closely at a drop of amber, and you might see a prehistoric ant or mosquito, perfectly preserved. These microfossils tell stories of climate, vegetation, and even the parasites that plagued ancient life. Even the spores of fungi and ancient pollen are preserved in amber. Each speck contains pollen and DNA fragments that are clues to ecosystems long gone. Trapped in golden glass, even the smallest players have a voice in this ancient saga. Each microscopic scene etched in amber is a secret waiting to be read. While the giants ruled, there were survivors in unlikely forms. Small mammals scurried in the undergrowth and burrows, avoiding the eyes of the big predators. At night, they listened for every twig snap, knowing danger lurked in the darkness. Some burrowed deep, thinking safety lay underground. Monotremes, platypus and echidna's ancestors, likely fed on insects at night, safe from daytime hunters. Marsupial mammals like the deer-sized kangaroos and possums dined on plants, hiding in dense cover. Birds might have filled the skies, megafauna pigeons and hawks circling above, scouting for prey. Rare would have been the ground-nesting creature feeling entirely safe, given serpents and lizards in every niche. In the fossil record, these tiny heroes usually show up as nondescript jaws and teeth, silent witnesses to those dramas. Imagine the stories hidden in such humble fossils. A claw mark here, a reptile tooth embedded there. They smelt fear, heard the roars. Even so, some mammals survived thanks to teeth too small to feed the giants and habits too cryptic to matter. They laid the groundwork for the next age of dominance. After the giants vanished, these survivors flourished. In the story of life, every empire falls. In its ruins, the survivors carve a new path. So we must ask, what did these early mammals witness of that lost world? When the first humans set foot on this ancient land, the giants were already gone. They stepped into the vast outback with trepidation, alone under the Southern Cross. But the echoes of that brutal world remained, especially in the animals that survived. Early humans learned to fear what they could not see. Snakes hidden in the leaf litter, spiders crouching under rocks. Venom was a constant threat. Even a modest hike required caution underfoot. Aboriginal hunters would have known the dangers of every footprint in rustle. They mastered fire and tools, the best weapons against invisible predators. Torches illuminated dark crevices, and smoke drove venomous creatures from their lairs. In these practices, people coexisted with those chemical ghosts of the giants. They became the stewards of a land whose memory could kill with a single drop. Their knowledge and respect for venomous animals became woven into culture and myth. Even now, the lessons of that time live on in traditions and warnings passed down through generations. And still we wonder, how will we continue to coexist with these ancient legacies? In the end, even these titans were mortal. Climate change, human hunting, or changing habitats, something finally tipped the balance. The ice ages came. The continent became even harsher, and few great creatures could survive. The giants vanished, their reign ending quietly in the red dust. Perhaps the waterholes dried up more often. Perhaps the smallest creatures escaped and left them no food. Whatever the cause, the age of reptiles gave way to a world ruled by new masters. Their bones lay scattered in the sands, waiting for us to uncover their story. All that remained were the echoes of those ancient bloodlines. We think of their legacy and remember how thin the line is between survival and oblivion. Every creature, no matter how mighty, is ultimately fragile in deep time. When we stand on this ancient ground today, one question lingers. Will our own legacy endure when the dust settles? Today, Australia's story continues in subtle ways. The giants are gone, replaced by new rulers, humans, dingoes, and even feral animals. These predators are masters of camouflage in city and wilderness alike. Saltwater crocodiles still lurk in the north, reminiscent of their ancient ancestors. Kangaroos and wallabies still roam the plains, albeit without the giants that once pursued them. These creatures are still here. They survived by being just smart or fast enough. Even small predators like birds of prey, eagles, and owls fill some niches left empty. A snake hiding in tall grass, or a spider in a sandal, continues a dance begun millions of years ago. Yet the most potent legacy remains the tiny toxin bearers. The world's deadliest snakes and spiders still lurk in its grass and woods, waiting as silent reminders. Modern Australians grow up knowing the rules of this chemical war zone. Watch your step. Avoid the darkness. Stories abound of near escapes, modern miracles of anti-venom, the only thing between life and death. The continent still feels on edge, as if under the watch of those invisible threats. How will this legacy shape our future? Will Venom's masters remain supreme? This continent's story leaves us with haunting questions about our own place in time. Are we too under some invisible shadow that we barely understand? Our world still holds pockets of that ancient power. Venom, red earth, and a harsh sun. We gaze at the empty waterhole and hear echoes of the past in every whisper of wind. Our entire history is just a blink. The dinosaurs had more time than we can imagine. Yet our actions now will ripple far beyond us. Just as those giants vanished, our own legacy feels fragile against time's march. We like to think we stand at the top of the chain, yet even we might be humbled by forces beyond our imagination. As we stare into the darkness of the night, does the silent watch of deep time give us pause? In the end, perhaps the only certainty is that life is transient and time is unrelenting. And so we wonder, when we too become stories in the dust, what will future eyes see or even know we were ever here? Imagine stepping into an ancient forest and finding the ground alive beneath your feet. Not with twigs and leaves, but with tiny, venomous traps. It is as if someone scattered landmines of silk and poison across the floor. The carpet of damp leaf litter is no gentle trail. It is a minefield. Every crunch and snap under your boots could signal danger. Crouch down, and you might feel 1,000 invisible eyes watching you. The air is heavy with the musk of decay and damp earth. Here, spiders lie in wait, a legion of 8-legged hunters more deadly than any snake slithering above. These hunters don't chase their prey. Instead, they weave homes of pure white silk in the darkness. Every thread is a hidden trigger. The slightest tremor could unleash a flash of black, shimmering, venomous fury. What do you imagine is going on under the next step? Beneath the roots of a towering eucalyptus, in the cool, moist earth, another predator perfected its craft. It's the ancestor of the modern funnel web spider, a living fossil as potent as any ancient monster. This hunter made no dash or pounce. Instead, it spun a hidden lair, a pure white silk tunnel descending into a silent underground chamber. The entrance is like the mouth of a cave, pure and white in the black soil. Inside, the world is pitch dark. It sees nothing. Instead, every step sends a signal. Its 8 legs, covered in fine hairs, press against the silk like sensitive sensors. To this spider, a lizard's toe might feel like a jackhammer through the walls. Try sneaking past one. It's like tiptoeing by a guard dog who can hear each tiny crunch of a cracker underfoot. The slightest tremor, and the spider erupts, a sudden flash of glossy black legs and lethal fangs. Can you feel the forest floor tremble with danger? Now shift to drier, warmer ground, where even larger spiders ruled, the ancestors of today's tarantulas. These were not dainty web weavers. Imagine a creature the size of a small dog, covered in bristly hair, scuttling under the baking sun. Burrows plunged straight down, vertical shafts in the earth, hidden by leaves and stone. A tarantula's fangs were terrifying. Two large black daggers slashing downward. If a normal spider bite is like a pinprick, these were more like being punctured by tiny sabers. You could swear you heard one rumble in the dirt before it struck. A low, menacing hiss. Picture one bursting from its hole, a miniature armored knight charging out of a tunnel. It was a living tank on 8 legs. These hair-covered predators weighed as much as a brick. Given all this, what chance did anything on the forest floor have to escape unscathed? But the leaf litter's danger didn't stop with lone assassins. Under that dense carpet moved an army. Armored, stinging soldiers of countless numbers marched tirelessly, a relentless legion of tiny hunters. This was not the shy, scavenging ant we know. It was Mamisha, the bulldog ant, straight out of ancient nightmares. To a tiny insect, these ants must have seemed like walking needles. Their bodies were tough armor, their mandibles fierce clamps. Each carried venom, each could sting. Imagine being surrounded by thousands of these hunters, each ready to bite or poison you at once. They added another layer of danger to the forest floor. Imagine crawling hundreds of thousands of little tanks, each with its own pair of scissors and needle. What chance would any creature have against such a legion? To see one up close is to witness an older, fiercer vision of an ant. Mamisha was a giant among ants, almost an inch long, hardened armor, and a massive head crowned with 2 huge, unnerving compound eyes. In that face, every detail is about war. Its jaws weren't the small mandibles of a worker. They were long, serrated sickles, held open like a bear trap. Behind it sat a tail and sting straight out of prehistory. The bulldog ant possessed a long, powerful hypodermic stinger inherited from its wasp ancestors. Imagine facing one, its armored body low to the ground, jaws clicking hungrily open, a venomous barb cocked at the ready. How could you possibly escape if it chose you as prey? This was no mild-mannered scavenger. It was a solitary hunter, a tiger of the leaf litter. It did not follow chemical trails like other ants. It stalked by sight, by speed. Picture a tiny warrior sprinting across the forest floor. Its glossy, reddish-black body held high, mandibles spread like a bear trap. A spider or beetle could be just ahead, scraping at the earth when the bulldog ant locks eyes. No trail is too faint to escape those intelligent compound eyes. With a sudden, explosive leap, it closes the final distance in a heartbeat. Its movement is a blur of precision and aggression. One moment its prey is free. The next, it is pinioned by serrated jaws, impaled as the ant clamps on. Then the abdomen arches, and that powerful sting drives deep, injecting its venom again and again. In that instant, the struggle is over. What unimaginable pain awaited its victims in that fatal sting? The ant's true legacy was in its poison. Its venom was not a simple irritant. It was a brutal chemical cocktail. Imagine stubbing your toe and feeling as though hot coals are being poured into the wound. This venom was designed to kill and punish. It created memories, raw, screaming memories of pain that would last forever. Each bite was a chemical scream echoing through the nerves of its victim. You might think that sounds like hyperbole, but for any creature that crossed this ant, it was reality. After one taste, every predator learned to stay away. No other weapon in this land matched the agony it unleashed. What predator could forget such agony? This, then, was the true, layered danger of prehistoric Australia. The giants, like Megalania and Quinkana, were the loud threat, obvious and terrifying. But the small hunters, the snakes, the spiders, and this venomous ant were the silent danger, hidden and deadly. To live here was to navigate a minefield of threats. Every creature, every plant, every drop of water played a part in this ruthless balance. The continent was an ancient machine of survival, running on its own hostile logic. What happens when a new force enters such a perfectly balanced world? Before humans arrived, this land was already bizarre and complete. In its millennia of solitude, Australia had grown giants of its own design. Picture an ecosystem where every day felt like a walk through myth. The forest might echo with the deep growls of the marsupial lion, a cat with a thumb. Above, giant flightless birds wandered, their heavy beaks and thick legs unlike anything you've seen. The ground could tremble beneath the gallop of colossal kangaroos, towering higher than a human. In the swampy rivers and lakes, prehistory lingered. Crocodiles longer than a city bus, goannas as big as bears. Even birds could carry war paint. The air might ring with the rattling of giant quokkas or the screech of huge hornbills. It was a land where dinosaurs had not completely vanished. What would you do if you found yourself in a world filled with such monsters? But even this ancient world of giants and silent killers was about to meet a new predator, one born not of scales or claws. Picture a twilight shore on Australia's north coast. The land, lush and massive, stretches into new nightfall. Into this world drifted a whisper of a people, small, soft-skinned, and nearly defenseless. They arrived not by armies or drums, but quietly, perhaps a single family on a woven raft. They carried nothing more fearsome than sharpened sticks and a strange, glowing tool: fire. What were these curious animals, and what did they bring to a land where even the ground could kill you? The continent, of course, knew fire, wild blazes born from lightning strikes. But the flame these newcomers carried was different. It was tamed, deliberate. It lived at the end of a stick, obeying its human masters. Day or night, they could summon it. It was like wielding a little sun. They could light it to cook food or to clear forests. It was a weapon as well as a tool. For the first time, an animal had mastery over fire itself. Could such a small spark challenge the giants of this ancient world? They quickly turned their brains into weapons. The first was the spear. It was more than a sharpened stick. It was a missile, a new idea. Kill from a distance. The great beasts here, bull kangaroos, carnivorous dragons, had always had to strike up close. Now, a human could stand safe dozens of feet away and send a deadly spear flying. It would whistle through the air and find its mark. Imagine a grazing kangaroo feeling a sudden pain and dying, and it never even saw an attacker. For the predators of this world, it was as if an invisible archer had appeared. How could any creature adapt to a foe that could kill it without even being seen? Imagine a hunting scene. A herd of giant kangaroos graze in a valley, alert for known threats. Suddenly, from the dry bushes comes an unfamiliar sound. Thwack! A human spear splits the air and a kangaroo falls. Then another. Panic sets in. But they're not fleeing a single beast. They're surrounded. A semicircle of human hunters stands poised with spears. The wall of fire, spears, herds the herd. The kangaroos bolt, but every leap pushes them deeper into the human trap. The very creatures who thought themselves safe are ensnared by human cunning. How do you run when you're surrounded by a ring of unseen predators? But their true weapon was the landscape itself. They hunted the land. A handful of humans could light long lines of fire to corral entire herds. Picture it. A small team lights the far end of a valley. A wall of smoke and flame creeps across the grasslands, inch by inch. With no fear of this strange tactic, the prey animals bolt towards safety. But all safe paths are burning. They are driven into a single corridor, exactly where other hunters lie in wait. It is not a hunt. It is a harvest. The humans simply let the fire do the driving. What do these giants do when even the earth itself is weaponized against them? This small, fire-wielding creature should have been easy prey in this brutal world. In normal circumstances, it might have been wiped out in a single generation. But this new predator played by different rules. Strength was in the group, in the plan. 20 humans acting together became an unstoppable force. With spear and fire, they rose to the top of the food chain. They didn't just leave bones in the earth. They wrote on walls. They became the continent's first historians. When they set their marks into stone, they chronicled a world that was about to vanish. What stories did their paintings on cave walls preserve? These humans were not just hunters. They were witnesses. They carried the memory of giants in their minds. To remember and teach, they created a different kind of record. On the cavern walls of Arnhem Land and the rocks of the outback, they began to paint with ochre and clay, using the continent's own colors, reds, yellows, whites. They drew the world they knew. Their paintings were maps of creation and life, histories alive on stone. Each figure told a truth. Among kangaroos and fish, what ancient beasts did they capture? On these stone canvases among kangaroos and fish, there appear stranger figures. One is a giant flightless bird with a heavy, powerful beak and short legs, not an emu. This painting matches perfectly with the fossil bones of Gnornis, the demon duck. It is not a mythic beast. It is an eyewitness portrait from a time long gone. We are looking at a wanted poster drawn by humans who lived 50,000 years ago. It shows a monster they hunted and feared. If they painted a demon duck, what other giants did they see? They searched for the shadows of Megalania or Quinkana in their art and stories. Instead, they gave us the rainbow serpent. This powerful being is not just a snake, but a force of nature. It creates rivers, lives in deep waterholes, brings both life and danger. Is it possible that this great serpent god is a memory of the real monsters of the past? Could the rainbow serpent be the echo of the 7-meter Megalania or the river tyrant Palomares in human imagination? We can't know for sure. But one thing is certain. These paintings are not fantasies. They are whispers. They blur the line between zoology and myth. They tell us that the first Australians did not just dream of giants. They lived among them. What do these ancient whispers say about the world that used to be? But But this new, intelligent, and fire-wielding hunter was not the only force of change on the continent. Long before humans arrived, the world was already changing. They blur the line between zoology and myth. They tell us that the first Australians did not just dream of giants. They lived among them. Great ice sheets expanded across the poles, locking up fresh water in miles of ice. Rain became scarce. Droughts stretched from years into decades, then centuries. The great inland seas and lakes began to recede, turning into salty flats. Vast rivers slowed and broke into isolated pools. The waterholes, the lifeblood of this ecosystem, started to vanish. Life hung by a thread. What happens to a continent when its veins run dry? Gradually, the world that teemed with giants began to empty. The great creatures that had dominated this land started to disappear. No single cause gets full credit for this vanishing act. Maybe humans sped it up, or maybe an unending drought was to blame. Either way, the land grew strangely quiet. After millennia of mighty footsteps, only the smallest creatures began to survive. The mighty marsupial lion, the towering kangaroos, the massive river monsters, all faded into memory. The ancient forests, once alive with roars and squawks, fell eerily silent. What happens to life when the giants vanish? In a land of fading monsters, only the adaptable remained. Water became the new currency. Life clung on in isolated oases, permanent springs in the desert, shimmering seeps under sandstone. Bands of small marsupials, reptiles, and birds eked out survival at the margins. Even the humans learned to change. They followed the rains, depended on each oasis, each patch of green. The dreaming stories turned from predators to water and survival. As Earth's climate wavered, the continent continued its lonely drift. If the giants and the fearsome insects had their time, could any memory of them outlast the desert's silence? What echoes of that ancient world remain in the land that lives on today? Human arrival coincided with the dying breath of the continent. As the climate cooled and dried, the newcomers used fire to shape the shrinking world. Some scientists argue that the megafauna might have been sliding into oblivion already. Humans might have been catalysts. Nevertheless, when the last giant kangaroo fell and the last Tasmanian lion became legend, the age of monsters truly ended. The land that had once been a tapestry of fear and wonder became something closer to the Australia of today. Small pockets of life clinging to water and shade. One night, by a dying campfire, the first Australians gazed up at a sky wheeling above nearly empty plains. The memory of the dreaming and its creatures became their link to what once was. In the silence, they told stories of creation, of floods, of the mighty who came before. And in the end, who holds the memory of such worlds, if not the stones and the stories woven into the land? And what will our own story look like to the distant future, when all our giants are gone? And lurking in the undergrowth were other hidden perils, the snakes. In the tangled vines and fallen logs slithered creatures like brown snakes and death adders, masters of ambush. Even among these eight-legged webs and marching armies, the snakes held their own lethal legacy. To a small lizard or bird, the approach of a death adder might come without warning. Unlike the seismic spider, a snake's strike is blindingly fast, a perfect ninja attack. Imagine trying to tiptoe past one. To an ant, it's like sneaking by a silent ninja assassin. You can never hear them. Together with spiders and ants, These snakes wrote their own venomous chapter. What hope did any creature have in such a silent, slithering minefield? The challenges weren't only predators and prey. The climate itself could turn deadly. Australia's weather swung between extremes. Long droughts withering the land could follow years of deluge. Imagine living through an endless dry spell, then a season where rain fell like a curtain every day. The great beasts had to breed and eat in rhythm with these wild seasons. Even water could be a weapon. Flash floods could sweep away unsuspecting animals and predators alike. In this world, the sky and land were as unpredictable as the hunters that roamed. How does life endure when weather whips from gentle to savage without warning? These first Australians didn't just paint animals, they lived their stories every day. In the dreaming, each figure on rock and each ancestral path is both history and law. They painted not only the great beasts, but also scenes of hunt and ceremony, humans in the act of survival. A circle of figures might show the tribe dancing around a fire, connecting them to the ancestors who once walked this land. Each sacred site became an open book. The walls themselves taught the young how to live. The dreaming is still alive today in many Aboriginal cultures. What secrets remain in the art when no one left who remembers the stories it tells? For scientists, fossils and rock paintings together tell a fuller story. For instance, the bones of Genyornis were mysterious until Aboriginal paintings showed exactly what it looked like. Suddenly, a giant flightless bird stepped out of legend into the light of science. This collaboration of evidence shows how well the ancients knew their world. There might still be creatures lurking in stories. Is it possible some beings were never found as fossils, but are preserved only in song and image? And if so, what else does the earth still hold, unseen in stone, but alive in story? Yet life is tenacious. When the giants were gone, other creatures took their place in the story. Survivors of the extinction were often the oddballs, small marsupials and reptile scavengers thriving in the ruins of the old world. Monster lizards and crocodiles remained, just scaled down. Wallabies, possums, and small birds multiplied in the open niches. Echidnas and platypuses continued along streams. Even the kangaroos that survived became smaller, more agile. In the end, life adapts to the silence. Do the bones of those giants still echo in these descendants? Or are they lost in the shifting sands of time? Geologic time makes all of this seem fleeting. To Earth, 50,000 years is the blink of an eye. We spend years picking our battles, but the planet measures centuries and ages. The ancient forest and its monsters stood for millions of years before humans arrived. And now they're gone. Even the memory of their world is fragile. The dreaming, the fossils, and the very rocks themselves have recorded their passage. It's as if the earth itself were a storybook written in stone. As humans, we think our history is long, but in deep time, it is brief. Imagine an ocean wave washing away footprints on the sand. All species are footprints, temporary impressions on the shore of time. If you look at our fragile presence in this vast history, what mark will we leave? Will we be a lasting echo of ancient giants, or just a faint, barely visible line of smoke fading into nothingness in the sun? And who can say what echoes remain in this land? Imagine walking into a garden of spiky, dusty trees and watching an elephant try to snack on crispy, thorny leaves. It's a strange sight, because these huge creatures have no food. The sclerophyll kingdom is dying. Ancient forests of eucalyptus and acacia have become an armored, almost poisonous world. The trees are parched and tired. Imagine leaves shriveling under a hot sun. Their natural chemicals concentrate into a bitter brew, and nutrients vanish. Under this red sky, the giants of Australia starve. We see massive bodies lumbering through brittle shrubs. The Depredon, for example, is a furnace of teeth. 4 tons of marsupial bulk fueled on low-quality leaves. But when the last few shrubs wink out, its engine sputters to a halt. It's like putting a diesel truck engine on a diet of twigs. It simply cannot run. The walking kangaroos, the so-called demon ducks, even those hippo-sized swamp beasts, they all depended on an endless buffet of tough, fibrous plants. Now that buffet has turned into red dust and dry thorns. We could picture a 5,000-pound kangaroo trying to chew on rocks for a meal. These creatures were built for a harsh but stable world. Their low and slow breeding rates could survive a short drought, but they were trapped in a world losing water forever. They were weak, starving, thirsty. Herds shrink around disappearing mud puddles. Massive bodies become liabilities in a shrinking desert. How can creatures born to be giants survive a garden that no longer feeds them? Picture a herd of giants gathered at a dusty waterhole at dawn. Massive marsupial hippos wade into warm mud, splashing with each heavy step. Above them, demon ducks hiss and preen in tall grass. A marsupial lion paces under a gnarled eucalyptus, eyeing the herd. A warm breeze carries the scent of wet earth and eucalyptus pitch. Flies buzz like tiny helicopters, swarming every mouthful of water. Researchers reconstruct such scenes from fossil clues. Footprints show thousands moving in creeks. Imagine the ground trembling under 40,000 pounds of beasts, sending ripples across the water and pulses through the soil. The air is alive with life and death. A sunbathing lizard on a sunlit rock twitches at the slightest shadow, part of this noisy, moving world. How alive is this vanished world in the bones we find? And into this dying world walked a strange new beast. Humans with fire. We might think of early hunters stalking prey, but here it was as if a weak predator found a fallen giant. It was not set up as a battle. It was like arriving at a funeral. We stepped among the bones of a slow-motion apocalypse. 2 brutal forces now faced each other. On one side stood the ancient thirst of a baking continent. On the other, an intelligent predator wielding flame. In the end, it would be a knockout punch delivered to a 50-million-year-old ecosystem. Scientists have become detectives on this dusty case. Was the killer us or nature? One theory was a blitz, humans sweeping across the plains with torches, snuffing life like cigarettes. Another was a mega drought, an invisible predator starving entire forests. We hoped for a simple answer, but this mystery had 2 faces. The giants, unaware of this new danger, pressed on as they had for ages. One morning there were trees and life. The next there was only smoke and ash. It was a slow-motion extinction, and the continent watched like a silent, burning drumbeat, counting each step to collapse. How do you survive when the earth itself deals the first blow, and then man delivers the second? Imagine a giant slowly being starved by the sun. That's what Australia's ancient megadrought was like. Each season felt like another blow. Streams vanished overnight, swamps turned to cracked clay, the sky burned bright and blue. Trees that once stood lush browned and folded. It was as if the world had turned up the thermostat and forgotten to water the plants. Rivers thinned to trickles. Grasslands buckled under unending heat. Herds of beasts gathered desperately around the last pools. A lake a dinosaur drinks from evaporated like spilled water on hot pavement. The green fields vanished, replaced by ochre dust. The climate change had already walled these giants in. At midday, a breath of wind sent the scorched earth cracking beneath massive feet. The ecosystem was already brittle, on its knees before humans even arrived. The sky became a relentless oven, baking flesh and bone. So what comes next when the earth itself becomes an unforgiving predator? Could this everlasting drought alone crush the giants? Just as nature had them down, a new shadow fell. Humans arrived, walking onto this bone-dry theater, carrying torches. We often imagine early hunters stalking game at twilight. But in this desperate land, they carried flame into broad daylight. They only needed to find the last muddy puddles of life. These clever hunters did not face thousands of healthy giants. They found herds already trapped by thirst, like deer cornered by drought. The humans didn't have to run a marathon. They came with spears to a forced buffet. As one archaeologist put it, it was like stumbling into a party where everyone else has already fainted. And then they did the unthinkable. They turned the land into a farm of fire. Small fires coalesced into great waves of flame. The bush crackled. Smoke climbed into red skies. Burn scars expanded like dark lakes. One spark and dried brush became a rolling wildfire, as unstoppable as a tide. The once diverse ancient forests of eucalyptus and acacia were singed away and replaced by waves of firegrass and ashes. Specialized browsers, like the 4-ton tree kangaroos, found themselves eating charcoal. Imagine a horse raised on pine needles and concrete. That's how these giants felt. The ecosystem did not bend to this new regime. It shattered into chaos. What comes after the fires, when an entire ecosystem has burned to ash? In less than a geological blink, the giants were gone. Perhaps just a few thousand years, less time than it took to build an Egyptian pyramid, and the largest creatures that ever roamed this land simply vanished. The Depredon, Procopodon, Ginornis, Zygomatururus, all gone. It was as if someone pulled the plug on a living aquarium of monsters. One day their footprints filled the mud, and the next the ground was silent. The thunder of their 4-ton strides ceased. Their predators starved too. Reptilian lions and giant goannas woke to empty plains. A thylacine looked out to find no kangaroos. The whole scary drama walked off the stage. It was like a concert ending in a whisper after a final, triumphant note. A great and sudden silence fell over the continent. Without prey, the hunters had nothing left either. The loquacious thylacine quieted. The great megalania no longer slithered behind grass. Even the fierce marsupial lion vanished, along with its ambush. The heavy, visible dangers of prehistoric Australia were gone, and a calm stillness took their place. Is the silence after extinction really empty? Or is it full of secrets? Imagine uncovering a giant skull sticking out of red earth at noon. A paleontologist in a wide brim hat brushes off rock dust with careful fingers. The air tastes like dried dirt and old rain. Each bone is a page from a lost giant's diary. In a quiet lab, the smell of powdered fossil hangs in the air like cinnamon dust. We connect the dots of history from fragments of femurs and teeth, piecing together a jigsaw puzzle of gigantic proportions with missing edges. The clink of a dental pick against bone and the glow of a microscope's light are our tools of detective work. A broken femur, thicker than a telephone pole, beckons a reveal. Every fossil is evidence. Even a tiny beetle encased in amber tells of a spring day long vanished. Each find is a whisper from deep time. It's like following a trail of breadcrumbs through millions of years. Could the red dust and echoes of these bones tell us more than any human theory ever could? But danger didn't vanish. It shrank and went undercover. The new rulers of peril in Australia are hidden in plain sight. A snake only 2 feet long can now carry the spirit of a giant's hunting success. Imagine this slender inland taipan striking with venom so complex and fast it would stop a human, our closest giant descendants, in under an hour. A chemical legacy born in battles we can only guess at. This wasn't by accident. The taipan's venom is a lab experiment by giants, a formula refined to fell creatures 4 tons heavy with a single bite. Think of it as a microscopic army packed in its fangs. It's like finding a tiny nuclear missile in a shoebox. Not just snakes, spiders and scorpions carry these chemical ghosts too. The shiny Sydney funnel web spider is a walking ghost story of venom. Its bite could unravel an ancient reptile's nerves. The humble bulldog ant's sting is pure prehistoric fury. The giants are gone, but their weapons, the poison in these plants and animals, live on. Why do we still feel the bite of giant predators in the creatures underfoot? The land itself seems haunted by those ancient actors. Today's outback feels like a vast cathedral built for giants, now echoing with emptiness. Travel across Australia, and you sense this living memory in its silence. Every dry creek bed and empty waterhole, every haze of heat shimmering in eucalyptus forests, feels like it's holding its breath. Tiny survivors inhabit a stage built for colossi. Kangaroos the size of dogs, echidnas and wombats scurry through the dry scrub. They are like understudies left in an empty theater after the show ends. The wind whistles through gum tree branches, carrying echoes. When a dingo howls at night, it sounds like a distant reptilian growl of the past. Even the sky remembers the giants. Thunder rolls with deep voices, and one half expects to see a dark shape wade in the billabong. Instead, there's only the quiet glare of the hot dawn sun on rocks. The continent looks almost expectant. Every landscape here seems paused, like an orchestra, ready to play once more. Is Australia simply silent, or is it dreaming of its lost monsters? Now the true titans of Australia have become small. The modern saltwater crocodile is essentially unchanged from 200 million years ago. Imagine meeting a retired T-Rex swimming by a pond. That's what it feels like when you lock eyes with this ancient predator. Its lineage is a direct bridge to the reign of dinosaurs. These reptiles have waited patiently. A fisherman on the Daly River might cast a line, unknowingly playing a new role in an old food chain. The crocodile slips silently into the water, as though dinosaurs never left. Even without the giants, it still rules its domain, and Australia's forests remain an arms race legacy. Every snake, spider, and scorpion out there is a sniper that honed its bite or sting for something far bigger than a mouse. The venom they carry, the ambushes they set, are answers to an old call. The masters of that world may be gone, but they have not truly vanished. Their echoes wear new forms. What is lurking in the shadows when the night closes in? Australia's history is a symphony of extremes. It is a story of isolation, fire, and drought. A world where marsupial lions roared and massive wombats stomped. Its ancient pages are filled with impossible monsters. And then, suddenly, silence. But silence itself can speak. When the sky fills with stars and the night air shimmers with heat, the outback feels alive with memory. In the hush of a eucalyptus forest, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the giant footsteps that once thundered. The red earth still sleeps underfoot, holding the dreams of its lost kings. We stand in the bones of legends whenever we tread this ancient land. Are we truly alone in this silence? Or are we walking among ghosts?